Good evening, everyone. Welcome to 2025 Town Council meeting. Happy New Year, everyone. It's good to see everybody is out and excited about the new council year. So welcome. We'll entertain you tonight. Would everybody rise, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Michael Buswell.
Here.
Mary Isaac.
Here.
Michael Colohan.
Here.
Bill Mecca.
Here.
Ian Sather.
Here.
Jennifer Winchell.
Here.
Veronica Lenzen.
Here.
Richard Wolf. Here. Jason Marsh.
Here.
Anthony Dorsey.
Here.
Ashley Godiano.
Here.
Carl Massaro.
Here.
John Foreman.
Here.
Joe Pifko.
Here.
Scott Wick. Joy Cologne.
Here.
Steve Lemoyne.
Here.
Kelly Malazzi.
Here.
Tony Cinto. Kevin Shively.
Here.
And Nicole Satin.
Here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We do have a quorum this evening. Before we get to public comment, I'd like the council to approve the minutes from our December special meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I make the motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Mr. Wolf, are you in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That is a unanimous vote. Those minutes are approved. Let me just, somebody, did you grab the list, public comment list? Thank you. How many pages? Thank you. All right, so we have several people signed up to make some comments this evening. I remind you that your comments are limited to any of the agenda items or discussion items that we have posted for tonight's meeting. And given that there are quite a number of you, I would ask that you try to make your comments concise. And if you've heard some of the same thoughts from prior colleagues' remarks, you maybe can shorten your comments by agreeing with others that have spoken before you. So we will start with Marlene Silverstone. When you come up, please give your name and your address.
Marlene Silverstone. Okay, thank you. Marlene Silverstone, 3 Cherry Blossom Lane, Trumbull, Connecticut. Good evening. I am a resident of Long Hill Village and abut the Grace Church property. I oppose the community center being located on 5958 Main Street, which is the Grace Church property, as it is incompatible and a nuisance to the surrounding dense residential communities. I have a letter to submit for the record, but I'm also providing these brief remarks. The Episcopal Church, the prior owner, had limited hours of operations and low-key functions and made a good neighbor. The town's plan for a community center during those times when the senior center is not open brings noise, traffic congestion, loitering that will have an adverse effect on the peace, quiet, safety, and health of the surrounding residential neighborhoods. The proposed senior center, if modeled on the current senior center, would be open 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., Monday through Friday, with its mission to enrich the lives of older adults. The Parks and Recreation Department would operate the community center at a minimum from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., Monday through Friday, and throughout Saturday and Sunday. It would be open for all types of recreation, meetings, and events that are not necessarily compatible with the surrounding residential communities. The above hours do not include the time before and after for people and cars to arrive, park, and leave. Based on the above, This would leave the surrounding neighborhoods 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. to enjoy their peace and quiet. This is unacceptable. The Community Facilities Building Committee has discussed buffers, but these buffers will only provide limited privacy from some of the adverse visual effects. They do not keep out the noise from people congregating in outdoor areas and adverse effects of traffic congestion and noise on and off the site, including cars arriving and leaving, stereos blaring, honking horns, running engines, etc. Depending on the event or the number of activities, these conditions are exacerbated as there can be up to 200 plus vehicles trying to arrive, park, or leave. In conclusion, I request the Town Council have the committee focus and work with the neighboring residential communities to develop a stand-alone senior center on the property, which will be an asset, not a nuisance. I request there be an increased open communication and discussion and transparency. This includes allowing the public to ask questions after presentations and committee responses at public meetings. Thank you. At this
Ms. Silverstone.
At this time, can I hand in my letter? Oh, do I come up to you?
Yes. Do you have a second letter that you were going to deliver?
You want me to?
Yeah, why don't you
Okay, thank you so much.
take care of
And I
that?
appreciate that.
Sure.
My neighbor, Linda Fusco, I have a statement from her. She lives at 7 Cherry Blame Lane. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it tonight. I'll read it to you. It's brief. Good evening. I am Linda Fusco, and I reside at number 7 Cherry Blossom Lane in Long Hill Village. My unit is adjacent to the parking lot at the former Grace Church site. For the last 10 years, I have had the good fortune to live in a quiet neighborhood, with the exception of a 3-month period when another church rented the property. During that time, the attendees were extremely loud, boisterous, and disturbing. It is my understanding that residents of Long Hill Village made complaints regarding the noise. What I am most curious about is the plans for the new senior center has been expanded to include a community/recreational center on the off hours of senior activities. We asked repeatedly and given no direct answer as to what type of activities would be served. In Trumbull, we have 2 middle schools and 1 high school. Where is the need for a recreation center? Obviously, you have something specific in mind if the proposed gym ceiling has been raised to middle school regulation height. To have late afternoon, evening, and weekend hours dedicated to activities will put an unnecessary burden of noise and traffic congestion on the surrounding neighborhoods that no buffer will alleviate. Has anyone considered how the Long Hill Village residents will be able to drive in and out of their complex? We have 70 units here, and most residents have 1, if not 2 vehicles. It is difficult enough at times attempting to drive out onto route number 111 Main Street without the congestion of a community rec center. A real study needs to be completed while in the planning stage. This is not an issue to be solved once the building is in place. The new senior center has been an ongoing dream for years. Different pieces of property have been considered and rejected for one reason or another. Why not build a senior center on the Grace Church property and on another piece of already acquired land, build a community/recreation center? Why does everything have to be crammed into one building when there are clearly other options? Sincerely, Linda Fusco.
Thank you again. Our next speaker is Mark McKeel.
Good evening, members of the Town Council. Mark McKeel, 27 Edgewood Avenue, lifetime Trumbull citizen. I believe this is our 11th or 12th time, I've lost count, since the Grace Church property has been proposed for the Community Facilities Building Committee. And as we have previously stated, we've been strong supporters of the town's purchase of the Grace property in order to preserve it from private development. Throughout this process, we've been repeatedly assured that the primary use of the property would be as a senior center with the occasional after-hours use for meeting space. In November, at our neighbor's invitation, members of the building committee and Mr. Rocco Petito of QA&M Architecture walked the abutting neighbors' properties to get a view of the impact to their homes and the property. We thank them for taking the time on a Saturday to do so. You will likely hear tonight this evening during your update that the neighbors were pleased with the results of the walk. Let me assure you, we were grateful, yes, pleased, no, and we're left with many unanswered concerns. As a result of the walk and the November Building Committee meeting, we did feel there was some progress being made. After the November meeting and prior to the December meeting, out of committee, QA&M was asked by some committee members and town staff to raise the ceiling height of the exercise activity space to allow for additional recreational opportunities such as basketball, and they resized the building renderings back into a middle school-sized gymnasium. Who's making these decisions? And how are they being made, especially if they're not being discussed in the public or decided upon in committee? After the December meeting, or at the December meeting, the superintendent of Parks and Recreations clearly stated Parks and Recreation will utilize this middle school-sized gymnasium weekdays after senior center hours from 5 to 9 p.m. and on Saturdays and on Sundays. Currently, we have 6 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and a high school with a couple of gyms in it that are staffed with janitorial, security, and support staff to support after-hour activities. Will we burden the taxpayers with the additional expense of not only the building, but to hire and staff and support a new facility for after-hour activities? Additionally, for the record, and I think this is very important, the December 11th Community Facilities Building Committee was in violation of the Trumbull Town Charter on meeting and meeting minutes, Chapter 2, Section 5B, which requires minutes to be posted within 7 days of the meeting, when in fact they were posted on January 2nd at 2 p.m. at the request of a neighbor to multiple town and committee members asking where the minutes were. Finally, this evening, as you review the committee update, and as stewards for our town and taxpayers' dollars, we believe it's important for you to ask and to clarify what our community needs versus what some people want. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKeel. Next speaker is Lori Walsh.
Good evening, Laurel Walsh, 5944 Main Street. The neighbors of Grace Church wholeheartedly supported the town of Trumbull's purchase of the Grace Church property. We applauded your efforts to save this valuable 6-acre parcel from private development. Our community was optimistic after the November 13th Community Facilities Building meeting, as it seemed our concerns were being acknowledged. Specifically, we appreciated the plans to resize the gymnasium, which demonstrated respect for the neighborhood's input. However, the details presented at the December Community Facilities Building Committee meeting regarding the gymnasium's height and operational hours felt like a significant step backward. The increased height clearly indicates that the facility is being designated to accommodate Recreation League basketball. This was further confirmed by Parks and Recreation Director, Mr. Dimitri Paris, who stated that the Parks and Recreation activities could run from 5 to 9 p.m. on weekends and weekdays. From the beginning, we have been assured that this development would primarily serve as a senior center, with some occasional evening meetings. While we strongly support the creation of a dedicated senior center, we are adamantly opposed to the revised proposal introduced on December 11th, which now includes a gymnasium intended for Parks and Recreation Department use after hours and on weekends. This property is simply too small to adequately support both uses. Furthermore, this shift in focus detracts from the primary purpose of serving our senior citizens, a purpose that we were led to believe was the cornerstone of this project. Tonight, we present to the Town Council a public petition signed by 384 Town of Trumbull residents between December 24th and January 2nd to be made part of the official record. This petition reflects the neighbors' voices directly impacted by the Grace Church property and the broader community's stance on this issue. We implore this council to do what's right. Prioritize the needs of our senior citizens and reconsider this project. Find a location better suited to accommodate the broader vision, one that does not compromise the integrity of this neighborhood or the well-being of its residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh. You have the petition?
Would you like the original or copies?
Oh, we'll take to the original. Okay. To the clerk for the record and the petition. Thank you. Did you want to read this petition? Yeah.
It goes over 2 minutes. I didn't think I had enough time. You can read it, whatever you like.
Well, I think we should, just for the record, why don't you take your copy and read? You don't need to read the signatures, just your language there.
Not a problem. Happy to. Petition against developing the Grace Church property at 5958 Main Street, Trumbull, Connecticut 06611 as a community center. We, the undersigned, are strongly opposed to the plan of a development at 5958 Main Street, Trumbull, Connecticut 06611 for the use as a community center for the use by the Parks and Recreation Department for after hours and weekend use. The current proposed development will cause significant, irreplaceable harm and damage for the following reasons: unsafe vehicle and pedestrian traffic concerns on Main Street and abutting roads, environmental erosion, littering and loitering concerns, light pollution, risk to existing wildlife and wildlife habitat. The site is simply too small for the proposed usage. Devaluation of property values by 10% or more for residential neighbors, $20 to $30 million taxpayer costs, and increased tax burden on taxpayers. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ms. Walsh. Our next speaker is Chris Pettinella, excuse me.
All right, Chris Pettinella, 69 Old Churchill Road. I just want to say, almost 400 signatures in that little amount of time. Your constituents are against this. I'd like to start off this evening by saying how disgusted I am with the town officials and building committee's blatant lies. I'm once again speaking in utter disbelief and opposition of the community center being implemented on Main Street. The administration loves to say they beat crime, taxes, and other negative effects on this town. In reality, the only thing they're beating is the middle class, and they're beating them to death. That's because the taxes and fees that this town is putting up. It's proven in a census. In Trumbull, only in 2010, only 8% of Trumbull residents were considered low income. In 2019, that number spiked to 13%. Once a bastion of middle-class prosperity, Trumbull's grappling with rising costs that increasingly make it difficult for many families to sustain a comfortable lifestyle. As Trumbull becomes less accessible to middle-class families, the town's losing diversity and balance that made it an attractive place to live. Trumbull's cost of living is notably higher than national averages. Housing expenses about 47% above national averages, and utility prices about 34% higher. Elevated costs contribute to the financial pressures on middle-class households. Trumbull's property taxes have steadily risen, as you know, fueled by the town's need to fund schools, public services, and infrastructure improvements, all good things. But they're expensive. For many middle-class residents, these increases strain household budgets, especially for people who are retired or families with fixed incomes. High taxes also deter new potential residents, further skewing the town's demographic profile towards wealthier individuals who can absorb these costs away from the middle class. The people in this town can't afford groceries, gas, or house expenses, let alone bills. Now, add a community center in a residential part of town that's going to cost over $20 million. How do you think these costs are going to affect the taxpayers? I mean, we just passed a $142 million new Hillcrest Middle School. That's going to deeply affect the taxpayers of this town. Do you think we can afford a brand new community center on top of that? Not to mention the upcoming sewer costs we're going to soon be sharing with Bridgeport. And you keep hearing me refer to this as a community center, and that's because it is. The administration has been lying to you for years. It's a community center. They call it a senior center to cover up what it really is. Lori Hayes O'Brien's quoted saying, quote, "It's a senior center with community center services." Let me break that down for you. That means it's a community center. They just don't want to tell you. With inflation as high as it is, it's definitely not the time to shove this down your constituents' throats. This project has already wasted millions of dollars on failed project sites due to environmental factors like building on Hardy Lane with the slope and the grade of that property. That was ridiculous. And now we have this Grace Church property that's steep again. I mean, go and walk the property and listen to the neighbors' concerns. God bless you if you think an elderly woman's going to be able to bear the natural grade of that property. It's incredible. We have elders here that are against the senior center, for crying out loud, a lot of them. And our elected officials deciding to industrialize small-town neighborhoods, it's preposterous. And I've got an idea, if we built it at a building committee member's house, a few houses down, it would be shut down pretty quick. Your taxpayer money has gone to pay architects, builders, and biased surveyors who can't answer your questions. According to the National Recreation and Park Association, the average cost to build a community center in the U.S. runs you about $1.5 to $10 million. This center is going to cost the town about $20 to $30 million after the millions spent already, and the associated costs, both initial and ongoing is important, pose a significant financial challenge. This needs to be studied and relayed to the public with total transparency. It's about time for the people of this town to have a say in their community taxpayer money. No one knows what's going on. The building committee meetings from the December 11th, 2024 meeting were not posted as of the new year, over 20 days after the meeting. And as Mark said, it went against some violations there. The secretive, condescending, and sneaky leadership is not serving this community. What can happen with sneaky leadership is something called eminent domain. It happened years ago when we were trying to build on South Edgewood and Old Churchill Road. The town bought people's homes forcefully. When the town gets greedy and needs more land to use for the community center, you know they're going to be knocking on 5944 Main Street and the 5976 Main Street, which is a Hawley Memorial Library that's now a residential home. I like to think Trumbull is about conserving the land and the ecosystem so that future generations like mine can, enjoy the natural beauty that's so scarce in this overdeveloped town. There's trees over 200 years on this property, and I saw they're going to die anyways. Yeah, well, we like to say we're for the ecosystem, then we say that. They're going to be cut down and grinded up. The property's natural beauty, backing up to the Pequannock River Valley, is a beautiful sight for the neighbors in the community to soak in during the fall time. Some of these trees are going to fall their leaves for the 200th and something time so we can industrialize this town. Industrialization in relation to the multi-level apartment buildings being built in Trumbull Center just after the hundreds were built near the mall. I'm sure you guys know that. Trumbull's becoming Bridgeport rapidly, and the industrialization of neighborhoods and rampant crime is destroying our small-town charm. Let me run you through a quick scenario.
Mr. Pettinella, can you
Yeah.
move along, please?
A couple more. Almost done.
Thank
A
you.
wave of seniors roll into the senior center. Well, we can't get a straight answer, so I'm not sure if we should call it a senior center or a community center, because community center services, whatever that means. These people use a full-size gymnasium that apparently 80-year-olds need to play basketball, unless the gym is going to be used for the youth. By the way, the 23-foot-high ceilings meet the requirements for NBA standards. Once these people leave the property, what do you think is going to happen to that property? Is there going to be a locked gate? I saw the gate, but is it going to be locked? And is there going to be a fully lit parking lot at all times, rising your taxes with electrical costs? Because I can tell you, having town property vacant at night leads to loitering. And people are going to commit crimes. And these are things we just don't look into. According to a 2020 report by the U.S. Department of Justice, public facilities such as parks, community centers, and recreational spaces are common targets for vandalism, with perpetrators often damaging property as a form of expression or to create chaos. In the center of Trumbull, in Trumbull is not adequately secured, it will face broken windows, graffiti, or destruction of other amenities like our full-size gymnasium, leading to costly repairs and a perception of reduced safety in town, which is already prominent. A study published by the Journal of Crime and Justice in 2015 found that certain public places, when poorly monitored, can inadvertently foster drug use or trafficking, particularly if they are not well lit or isolated from view. The back of the building is very isolated from view. We're not looking into the safety. The Grace Episcopal Church was supposed to have a safe spot for fire trucks and emergency responders to pass through the Long Hill Village community. The plans, 2 rows of trees, are shown as an ugly buffer throughout the property, leaving no pass-through space for first responders. Just looking at the plans, they provided a food pantry in the middle of the building, open to a wide-open parking lot. Big glass garage door yields no privacy to the community that would be using this resource. And the plans are altered, even larger than before. You know, one of my neighbors said, building set to be a 2-story building, peering right into the backyards of Edgewood Avenue, leaving neighbors vulnerable with no privacy. These families' lives are built around their homes, their biggest assets, and if you vote for this, you're voting against their biggest assets. A 2017 study published by the Journal of Real Estate Research found that close proximity to facilities that generate high traffic volumes or disrupt residential areas can reduce property values by 10%. Our residential neighborhoods will face major hardships in trying to accommodate the additional vehicles, particularly during peak hours of events, classes, or gatherings. The increase in cars will clog roads, especially during school hours, right when the classes would be dismissed. For a town that claims to value its quiet residential atmosphere, this is going to lead to significant disruptions in daily life.
Mr. Pettinella, thank you very
Oh,
much.
that's it? Okay.
If you'd like to submit the rest of your
Yeah,
all
I'll
of your
have to submit
remarks, you're welcome to do that.
Yeah, a couple minutes for these people. You're destroying these people's lives and their homes here. But all right.
Our next speaker is Judy Flaws. Again, I remind all our speakers there's quite a list to go yet, and we have a lot of other business to attend.
I'll be
And we
brief.
need to hear from our committee as well.
Judy
Thank you.
Flaws, 30 Edgewood Avenue. We are aware that the seniors in our town need and deserve a new and updated center. That being said, we have spoken in favor of being considered for Grace Episcopal Church property. However, under no circumstances do we agree to a community center on this property. We have questions we want answered, and yet time and time again, we are told that no questions will be allowed. We ask that you, the town council, get the answers we need and deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flaws. Our next speaker is Sandra Fancook.
Hello. My name is Sandra Fancook, and I'm at 22 Edgewood Avenue. I'm one of the residents whose property abuts the church parking lot. The footprint of the proposed building is too big for the size of the property and neighborhood. We were originally assured that the proposed development would primarily serve as a senior center with some evening meetings. At the December 11th building committee meeting, we were made aware that the size of the gym had been increased and Parks and Rec would be scheduling activities until 9 or 10 at night and weekends. A facility just as a senior center would be a better fit rather than a multi-purpose one. Thank you.
Thank you. And
Good evening.
Mr. Fancook.
Jerry Fancook, 22 Edgewood Avenue. I'd like to address the buffer zones. Every time someone from the building committee or the architectural firm speaks about or shows a proposed drawing of the outside of the building, the buffer zone changes. First, it was 24 feet on both the Edgewood Avenue side and the village side. When the building committee members walked our property on November 16th, it appears that it's 15 feet now. Also, the type of buffer changes going from stone wall to trees or berm, or a combination of all three. We have no idea what it's going to look like. The distance and types of berms seem to be moving targets. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fancook. Next speaker is Brian Walsh.
Brian Walsh, 5944 Main Street. Good evening, Town Council. Growing up, I believed that the elected and appointed officials pursued public service to represent the community entrusted with its well-being. While I am no longer naive, I held on to this belief until August of this year. Since then, I have witnessed firsthand the disheartening reality of small-town politics, where personal agendas outweigh what is right for the town and its citizens. The purchase of the Grace Church property by the town of Trumbull has been an eye-opening experience. It has been revealed that political maneuvering, not genuine public service, drives decisions about the proposed senior community center. The neighbors of the Grace Church property, me included, have consistently voiced our concerns about this facility's size, scale, and potential misuse. In return, we have been met with empty reassurances and patronizing claims such as, "We are too early," or "We want to work with you." The events of the December Community Facilities and Building Committee meeting exposed these platitudes for what they are: hollow and dismissive. Despite opening our properties and laying out our legitimate concerns, the committee has continued to push forward essentially the same project we objected to, with minor adjustments meant to appease us without addressing the core issues. Shrinking the building's footprint while forcing in a gym intended for parks and recreation use is a disingenuous compromise at best. Our initial fears from the expanded hours of operation were validated when Dimitri Paris, Director of Parks and Recreation, explicitly detailed plans to maximize the facility's use well beyond its purpose as a senior center. Weekdays, weekends, and evenings until 9 p.m. are not just an inconvenience. They represent a blatant disregard for the promises made to this neighborhood. I am here tonight to demand that this council take an objective, principled stand on this project. Stop forcing a square peg into a round hole. The Grace Church property is fundamentally unsuitable for the size and scope of this facility. It is unfair to expect the neighboring residents to tolerate the loss of their privacy with cafe patios overlooking their yards. Likewise, it is equally unjust to ask the Trumbull senior citizens to accept watered-down amenities that fail to meet their needs to squeeze this project into an inappropriate location. If Trumbull truly needs a senior and community center, find a proper location with sufficient acreage to accommodate the facility without compromise. Repurpose the Grace Church property in a way that respects both the neighbors and the town's infrastructure needs, but not for this ill-conceived project. I urge you to do what is right for the citizens of Trumbull, not just what is politically expedient. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Our next speaker is Dawn Roy.
For the record, it's very hot in here. My name's Dawn Roy. I live at 20 Edgewood Avenue. As a 22-year resident of this neighborhood and an abutter to the Grace property, my family and I have always been grateful for the peaceful quiet we have enjoyed in our backyard. This current plan will completely alter our home life and environment. We supported the town's purchase of the Grace property to protect it from private development. We have consistently been assured that the proposed development would primarily serve as a senior center with some evening community meetings. We are strongly in favor of a dedicated senior center with the appropriate barriers and buffers to protect our property, continuing to afford us the best possible outcome of our ongoing rightful quiet and privacy. We are firmly opposed to the current proposal introduced as part of the December 11 meeting that includes a gymnasium intended for use and deliberately stated scheduling by the Parks and Recreation Department for after-hours and weekend activities. A plan that will have this property in use 7 days a week until 9 o'clock at night. We will never have a break from constant light and noise pollution, as well as the obvious massive increase in an already congested traffic area on Main Street, currently impacting our neighborhood. Never mind the fact that our neighborhood will endure the concerning hazardous conditions to our health and safety from the demolition of the current structure and building of other necessary infrastructure. This property is simply too small to support both adequately and shifts the focus away from the needs of our senior citizens. Lastly, the plan currently is outrageous. It does not demonstrate, on behalf of those who are proposing these decisions, the genuine care, concern, and downright adequate consideration for the well-being of those of us who will utterly be negatively affected. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roy. Forgive me on the pronunciation of your last name. Elizabeth Wheeler?
Hello, Elizabeth Wecker, 16 Edgewood Avenue. Despite my concerns surrounding the environmental and neighborhood impact of the demolition of Grace Church and the building of the new proposed senior center, I am here to support the project if it is to be used as a senior center only. I am opposed to any usage of the building as community center, especially in regard to a larger gymnasium to be used nights and weekends for sports activities. The site is wholly inappropriate for the noise, traffic, and congestion a community center would bring. This would destroy our neighborhood, affect our property values, privacy, and quality of life as we know it now. If a community center with a large gym, activity and meeting spaces, and even a pool are what Trumbull needs to add to our town, a suitable location needs to be chosen where a much larger facility can be built to accommodate these needs, not in an existing neighborhood and not at the Grace Church property. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wacker. Next speaker is Richard Wacker. Thank you.
Hello. Good evening. I'm Richard Wacker, 16 Edgewood Avenue. I'm a direct abutter to the church on its north side. The addition of a community center to the town of Trumbull would make it much more attractive to prospective new families. However, the location is troubling. I would prefer the property be used as a community garden, but I would approve and support the addition of a senior center. I think the town should do a much better job of looking for a more appropriate location for the community center so it wouldn't degrade the lifestyle or the property values of the surrounding neighbors. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wacker. Next speaker is Richard White.
Richard White, 169 Churchill Road. I want to speak about the building committee first. I've been asking for over a year now for the contract between the town of Trumbull, which I thought needed to be approved by a town council to hire architects, and QA&M. I have nothing in opposition to QA&M, but this contract has been in front of Board of Finance twice, Town Council twice, as part of last year's capital and then as part of a transfer. It's also been talked about recently by the building committee because it's been amended. So the amendment has not been made public, the contract has not been made public. Somebody asked why I just didn't make a Freedom of Information Act request for the contract. Personally, I don't think that should be necessary when town charter requires that invoices, contracts, working materials of any town building and any town committee be made available in the agenda prior to the meeting, or at a worst minimum in the minutes following the meeting. I'd also like to offer my support for the purchase of the property along Shelton Road. While I was on the Land Acquisition Committee, I've was the only vote against it, but we just didn't have enough information, mainly the price, for me to vote for it. But I would like to urge you to purchase that. My last comment is about the capital improvement for the Board of Ed budget. The superintendent and several have commented that the 10-year district master plan is a working document, and I would like to see references between the capital improvements for the Board of Ed and that working document. My biggest question is about the monies being spent at Long Hill Administration Building. That's our oldest school building. As you all know, it's over 103 years old, has significant problems. I've been puzzled why it wasn't tucked in with the Hillcrest. Maybe there's a space concern, maybe there's something like that, but it hasn't been brought out or pointed out in the capital improvement minutes or from the discussions I followed online. And I would truly like to see that 10-year district master plan, which was excellently done, kept up to date and referenced. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Our next speaker is Rodney Arganese.
How are you? Rodney Arganese, 23 Glenbrook Road. I'll be brief. I just wanted to speak on behalf of the Phase 2 of McDougal Stadium that's in the capital plan. Just as being a coach here for almost a decade, teaching in town, and have 2 future 2040 and 2042 graduates at home, I wanted to speak particularly on behalf of the so-called lacrosse wall. Just so you know, from a operational standpoint right now, the facility that players of various sports use is really dangerous. It's perpendicular to the road where the buses go in and out of. I've personally seen 2 incidents, one with a car, one with a bus, where a student almost got hit. And that's just me for my players there while I witnessed it. I just urge you to really consider this this evening because I understand that, this is kind of a one-time thing. I know it will be there for a very long time, as is the current, fencing and infrastructure that's going to be discussed tonight. But I really would, it would be incredibly traumatic if something were to happen because this didn't go through tonight. So thank you for your time and all that you do.
Thank you, Mr. Arganese. Our next speaker is Sherry Boyd.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Town Council. Sherry Boyd, 16 Pinehurst Street. A 32-year resident of Trumbull, I am also the founder of the Trumbull Trail Group on Facebook, where we care deeply about the environment, including the Pequannock River Valley. Sorry. I live my life every day trying to do the right thing and helping others as I'm able. From the minute I learned of the Grace Church situation, I joined the effort to defend nature, our neighborhood, and help guide the committee and the architect to the right solution for Trumbull. Let's not make the wrong decisions in haste. In September, when we first saw the plans for the Grace Church property, we were told that it was actually the Hardy Lane building, and a more appropriately sized building is in the works. Here we are in January, with virtually the same footprint having been presented at the December meeting. Senior centers are managed by social services. Community centers are managed by Parks and Rec. Having researched 20 Connecticut towns, 12 close to Trumbull geographically, and 8 with similar populations, only 4 of those have combined these facilities. Here's my research, and I'm happy to provide the maps of the proximities if the council would like. By combining the senior center with the Parks and Rec building, the town is placing senior needs second. Seniors need a dedicated building. Giving Parks and Rec control of a senior center will cannibalize the hours for senior programming. In the December meeting, it was announced that all trees are coming down. There are trees on the Grace Church property that should be saved. We ask that the town please hire an independent arborist to evaluate age and health of the trees and determine which can be saved with proper care. Having the manager of Parks and Rec do this is a clear conflict of interest. With so many acres of park space in Trumbull that has underutilized grassy areas, there must be a better fit for the community center that will have extended hours, traffic, and activity levels. Maybe even enough space to get the pool back in. Build an appropriately sized senior center at Grace Church, keep the trees and shrubs, donate the 5 wooded lots behind the property to the Pequannock River Valley. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Our next speaker, thank you very much. Oh, I got it. The fan cooks. Notes from the fan cooks for the record, and from you, Ms. Boyd. Thank you so much. Next speaker, Brittany Jones.
I just wanted to say thank you again for giving us the opportunity to speak. My name's Brittany Jones, and I live at 5976 Main Street, which is the old Hawley Memorial Library, which abuts the property on the front left side. I'll keep it brief and appreciate all the comments from my neighbors, which I do agree with and support. The purchase by the town for use as a senior center only, and enjoy the idea of preventing private development on that land. Concerns as a resident, not just a neighbor, kind of taking a step back, just from what I've observed of these meetings, there is a lot of scope creep, inefficiencies, and I do worry about the needs of our seniors that is going to the wayside in the meantime of all of this, and keeping the taxpayers' costs in mind. As a neighbor, I would really ask you to put yourselves in our shoes, my neighbor's shoes. How would you feel if this was in your backyard? The hours of operation till 9 p.m., and again, that's when it closes, not when people leave. There will be lights shining in our windows, the noise. There will be no peace, no ability to sleep. The property values I'm also concerned about. Again, put yourself in our shoes. Would you want to buy a house that's next to a monstrosity that's going to be running until 10 o'clock at night? And of course, the traffic and environmental concerns, which I'm looking forward to receiving more information about. So I'll just leave it again. Please put yourself in our shoes and consider, if this was your home, how would you feel? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Next speaker is Elizabeth Jones.
Elizabeth Jones, 9 Pinehurst Street, Trumbull. I'm one street over from Grace Episcopal Church. I've been to every single meeting. I'm exhausted thinking about this, worrying about this. Our community, our neighborhood strongly feels a senior center would be appropriate for this site. A community center, this is just not a large enough acreage to accommodate something like this. At our last meeting, they talked about bringing the gym back in, a gym that they're going to build up but won't have enough room for spectators. So, my kids came up through this system. We've been in Trumbull for 25 years. I don't want to go to my kids' rec basketball game and not be able to watch them. That's just ridiculous. If we're going to do this, let's do it right. Leave the Grace Episcopal Church as a senior center and go find another location for the community center. And like Ms. Boyd said, maybe we can find a property that would be really, really appropriate, where you could have a gym and a pool. But we're shoehorning this into this little property. It's really ridiculous, and it's just not fair to the residents who've lived there and cared for their properties and cared for the schools. I'm just asking you sincerely, please consider us as the neighbors. It's just not good business. And it's not good relationship building with your residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Next speaker is Is it Doug?
Yes.
Doug Jones.
Doug Jones, 9 Pinehurst Street. Once again, just repeating what everybody has to say. First meeting I came here, Joe Pifko was sitting here talking to one of the ladies over here, saying about the town, or the senior center. We all are in favor of the senior center, but Joe was saying that's, maybe a maximum of 20 people show up at the senior center. I really believed that it was supposed to be a senior center, and I think the conversations were going back and forth with, max we ever see is 20 people at the senior center. Joe said that, and I was here, so I know you're shaking your head no. But did you not say that, Joe? You go to the senior center, and maybe 20 people maximum there. But anyhow, we're all in support of a senior center, but it's not appropriate. The space is not appropriate for a basketball court. I know we came to the one meeting, they showed us the schematics, and there wasn't a basketball court. They lowered it. The next meeting we come back, and it's back to the big court again. It's just not appropriate. There's plenty of places in Trumbull, Indian Ledge. Find some other place. It's not appropriate. We fully support a senior center at Grace Episcopal Church, but I think you guys can find some other place to put the community center. I know you're shaking your head no over there, but...
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to any item on our agenda? You've already spoken. You want to speak to something different? No.
Closing, but
No, that's okay. Thank you. Come on forward, ma'am.
Kelly Carlin, 193 Sterling Road. I'm largely an outsider to all of this. You've heard addresses tonight from Edgewood and Pinehurst. Probably one of the only residents on Sterling Road, but it affects the entire town. I came to an August meeting to hear from the residents here who have gathered and come together for, the sake of their community. And when I heard in November that a lot of their concerns had been validated, I thought, well, that's fantastic. I'm really glad that that's working out. I was shocked to hear that these concerns, in fact, really weren't met and understood. My surrounding community on Sterling Road, they thought the same thing. So some of the petition people that you'll see there from Sterling Road as well. It feels a world away from Pinehurst or Edgewood, but when I'm making that left-hand turn onto Walker Road, I'm worried I'm gonna have a car crash into the back of me. Yes. This fear would be exacerbated tenfold if there is a larger community center. There's not going to be a light. There's not going to be an expanded road. This is a safety concern. There's many other places in our great town that can be explored where we can take more time to consider this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, I don't see any further hands up, so I will close public comment at this time. I appreciate everybody's time coming out tonight, especially with a little bit of inclement weather, and your passion for your chosen subjects. We will hear from our Community Center, Senior Center Building Committee in a short while. Before we do that, Council wants to show some appreciation through some recognitions for folks who competed in contests with our VFW Troop 10059. So I'm going to ask the veterans from the VFW to come forward. We have Commander Graham Bissett. We have Program Director Dan Sacco, Steve Lemoyne, council member, and Bob Moraz. Sorry, thank you.
Good evening.
You can speak, go ahead, and then we'll bring up our award winners.
Okay. Good evening and Happy New Year, everybody. And thank you for First Selectman Vicky Tesoro, Chairman Carl Musaro, and the town council members for inviting us. We are honored to be here. I am Graham Bassett, Commander of Trumbull Memorial Post 10059, Veterans of Foreign Wars. We represent not only Trumbull, but also Shelton, Monroe, Easton, and Reading. As you can see, our post is ever expanding to reach more and more veterans. We were very productive this past year. We earned All-American Post honors for the second year in a row and earned All-State Post honors for the first time. There are 84 VFW posts in the state of Connecticut, and we are one of only 5 to receive these honors, and we are on course to repeat again this year. We also reestablished our Post 1059 auxiliary this year, and they are up and running and doing great work in the community. Which brings us to the reason we are here tonight. We are here to honor our Post 10059 Patriots Pen, Voice of Democracy, and Teachers of the Year. Will Senior Vice Commander Bob Moraz, Quartermaster Program Director Dan Sacco, Auxiliary President Pat Tivadar, and Auxiliary Vice President Kathy Romano please join me. First, our Patriot Pen honoraries. Patriot Pens is an essay contest open to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. This year's theme was My Voice in America's Democracy. Our honoree from Hillcrest Middle School is Brandon Russo. Unfortunately, Brandon couldn't be with us tonight, but here is part of what Brandon wrote. When I think of democracy, I think about all the veterans that sacrificed their lives to give me and our country a democracy. What democracy means to me is having freedom and being able to select a leader that I trust to keep our democracy alive. Many countries do not have the freedom that we do in America, and as citizens, it is our civic duty to keep our democracy safe. Our honoree from Madison Middle School is Sarah Suleiman. Here is part of what Sarah wrote. America's democracy is a system of diverse ways to express freedom. In the United States of America, you have the privilege to have influence and be heard. Every individual has the freedom to voice their opinions. It is the power that makes my voice, like every other, significant. The founders of our nation made great sacrifices to give us this power, and we should appreciate, value, and understand its strength and importance. Sarah and your family, will you please come forward? Next, for our Voice of Democracy honorees. Voice of Democracy is an essay contest open to high school students. This year's Voice of Democracy theme was In America today, our forefathers, is America today our forefathers' vision? Our honoree from Trumbull High School is Zuri Jiroge. Thank you. I practiced that today, believe me. Here is part of what Zuri wrote. During the September 9th, 1776 meeting known as the Second Continental Congress, delegates adopted the phrase, the United States of America. It would continue to be used to refer to the nation in official documents such as the Declaration of Independence, Articles of Confederation, and eventually the Constitution. Democracy is not restrictive, and we're here continuing to learn how to implement that as a nation. And while our forefathers did have a vision that supported America in many ways, they also missed the mark in many ways. It is our duty as new Americans to revise aspects that proved unsuccessful to ensure that we become a true United States of America. Zuri. Our Teachers of the Year honorees. From Monroe Elementary School, Tracy Sacco. Tracy is a Trumbull resident and proud daughter, granddaughter, and great-granddaughter of veterans who have represented our nation in combat zones in World War I, World War II, and Vietnam. She has created a program at her school that has the student body create poppies that are placed on the lawn in front of the school for Memorial Day. The poppies are collected and saved to be added for the next year. The program is ongoing and ever expanding, helping the students to understand the meaning of Memorial Day. This memorial is a tribute dedicated in the memory of past Post 10059 Commander Bill Ailes. Tracy. From Madison Middle School, Tracy Cranston. Tracy is a Trumbull resident. Her father served in Vietnam. Her mother was an Army nurse. Her brother served in the Navy, and her grandfather served during World War II. She also has two sons presently serving in the United States Army, Ryan and Dylan, who are both deployed. She's also a member of Post 10059 Auxiliary. Every year she helps put together the Madison Middle School Veterans Day assemblies to honor veterans, in which Post 10059 is proud to participate. Tracy.
Picture, going to send to her sons. Right. longer, sorry.
From Trumbull High School, Daniel Garrity. Dan is a Trumbull resident and member of Post 10059. Dan had a very unique experience. You see, he survived the opening battle of the global war on terror. He was working in Lower Manhattan and was supposed to be entering the South Tower of the World Trade Center on 9/11/2001. When he emerged from the subway, he was immediately engulfed in a snow globe of flying white paper. The first plane had hit the North Tower moments before he arrived. He was in shock and wondered how would he get to work in the South Tower and if his National Guard unit would be calling him. Moments later, the second plane hit the South Tower and he was almost killed by falling, flaming debris. He knew at that moment that we were under attack and the United States had just been brought into a new war by an unknown enemy. He reported for active duty the next day, 9/12/2001. Captain Daniel Garrity. Thank you again, and I speak for all veterans thank you for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Commander Bissett, and the rest of the VFW troop that came tonight, and to the award winners and their families. We will next hear from Dan Sacco. He's a member of the, excuse me, is he here? Oh. Okay, so, sorry for that interruption.
Yeah.
Mr. Sacco is going to give us an update on the Veterans and First Responders Center building progress at this point.
Okay, I'll
Good
do this
evening.
I'll do this quickly. The foundation for the building is in place. It's been winterized, so it's ready for nothing to happen for frost or cracking over the winter. The bid for the top of the building is now going out, and so everything is on target. When the bid comes back, we suspect from 7 to 9 months that the top of the building will be up and the building will be finished. I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to the council for the support you've given us over the years. One of the promises we made to you was that we would raise funds through some programs so that we never have to come back to you and ask for a penny. I can report to you tonight that we're outgoing with those programs. We have $170,000 in commitments. We've begun to collect the funds now that we know the building is going up. We've collected $70,000. I think we're well on our way to earn that $300,000 we promised we'd get you. So then when that building opens, we have enough to go run that building. So my report tonight's all positive. I thank you for your support, and I think we're going forward.
Thank you, Chairman Sacco. Any questions or updates, discussion from the council? Give you a chance. No? Okay. Our next item, of course, is an update from the Community Facilities Building Committee, We have our chairman, Lori Hayes O'Brien. We have architects with us as well.
Me too.
So, Hayes O'Brien, you're
Good
evening.
up. I am. Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to need a little support, I think, right now. Actually, as you said, I'm Lori Hayes O'Brien, chairperson of the Community Facilities Building Committee. I want to point out that I believe at least 8 out of our 11 committee members are here. They probably don't want to raise their hands right now, but I appreciate them being here, as well as our 2 town council reps for the committee. So what I'm just going to do tonight is give you a general summary of where we've been since the last time we were here. Tom Arcari and Rocco Petito are here from QA&M Architecture, who will give you a short presentation. And I think after that, what I'd like to do is talk about a little bit about next steps, as well as answer any questions specifically given what you've heard tonight. Hopefully some of the clarification will happen. As you know, last time we came before you, the town had just asked us to explore the Grace Church property on Main Street as a potential site for the Senior Community Center. I do want to do things a little backwards. At the end of usually my report, I tend to read our resolution, but I think it's important that I read it at the beginning of these comments now. So the resolution that created this committee states our purpose and responsibility is to create an up-to-date, useful, and cost-effective space for a senior and community center that can meet the needs of our senior population and better serve our community. That's been our driving force, and just thought that's something we should keep in mind as we continue the conversation. Since we've met last, the committee and the architects have met monthly. I think it was mentioned before, the committee also went on a walking tour of the property itself with George Estrada, who I just saw peek in, to get a better idea of the actual property. And then many of our committee members were able to go with a walking tour of the abutting neighbors' properties to kind of see the property from the inside out. Both of those tours were very beneficial in understanding where we were at. From there, QA&M developed an initial concept design based on the fundamental components that have been integral to the center since this project started and to the site itself. Since then, there's been numerous modifications to that concept based on public comments and committee feedback. Some, but not all, of those adjustments have included reducing the height from a 3-story building at our initial look to a 2-story building, reducing the width of the building so it got farther away from the neighbors, adding more buffers that will continue to be a conversation, reducing the number of parking spaces and the size of the parking lot, and eliminating bleachers and lockers from what has always been considered the gym and recreational space. And I'll touch on that a little bit now. Much conversation has been had, and I wrote this in my notes even before tonight, about the size of the gym recreational space. I think we've said to you every time that it has always been intention to have some kind of gym recreational space in the senior center, whether it was for community use or not. It's been lacking greatly in the senior center as it is now. I'll say the magic word, pickleball. It's still a conversation that we're having. It's what they're not able to do with the space they have now without eliminating some of their other programs. So gym space has always been a part of the senior center, and with our thought process being what other uses the community can do with that. So currently that space is about the size of a middle school gym. That was the size it was 2 meetings ago that people have been talking about. At our last meeting, there was some concern about whether we were being short-sighted and not getting the height higher. So the actual space itself was the same. The height was a little bit shorter. Not MBA height by any means. I don't even believe we're hitting middle school height at this point, but it was going to raise it about 2 feet, so that it gave some options for both seniors to play other sports that needed some height to it. So that's kind of how the gym / recreational area has been modified and kind of changed along the way. So basically a 2 feet height adjustment from where we were a couple months ago. We did talk about taking the bleachers and getting rid of a full-size gym out. We really thought that is what's going to cut down on population being there, people being there, to really look at that as a useful space, not a tournament space, not a lot of games going on, but that the gym could be used for a number of different activities without creating a lot of population there, a lot of people watching, those kind of things. So that was our mindset in that and doing that. Let's see. We believe the current iteration of that space can be a compromise that will work well for all. and something that we'll continue to talk about. We continue to get input from related town departments, particularly Michelle Jacob and Ronnie Morganson from the Senior Center are amazing. Dimitri Paris has weighed in from Parks and Rec. It was mentioned before that Dimitri also happens to be our town tree warden, did look at some of the trees after there were some public comments about that. If you ever want to learn a lot about how trees work, I think we learned a lot at our last meeting. I had no idea that some of the things that are happening, but they seem to be towards the end of their life of the trees we're looking at. There were two other, I believe they were called assistant tree wardens that took separate looks, came to the same conclusion. So that's kind of where we're at. What I think is probably best is if I have our wonderful architects, our wonderful patient and creative architects kind of give you some pictures of what we're looking at. And then if I could step back up afterwards and talk a little bit about some steps that we'd like to proceed with, and then obviously take questions as well. Okay. That's good. Out there.
Thanks, Deez. Good evening, Tom Arcari, principal with QA&M Architecture, 195 Scott Swamp Road, Farmington, Connecticut. It's been a while since we've been back and presented with you, so we'll give you an update of where we are. If you have any questions as our presentation goes along, please don't hesitate to ask the questions. I think discussion sometimes is very positive. So at the screen tonight, you'll see is the Grace Church site. I don't recall the last time we presented to you, but we spent a lot of time in the first month we were looking at the Grace Church site, of establishing viability or the use of this site as a senior and community center, at least to meet the program that we had been exploring at prior sites, i.e. the Hardy Lane was a previous site. In short, looking at all of the metrics, we felt that the Grace Church site was actually a much better site than the Hardy Lane site, and one of the best sites that we've looked at in the last 10 years of doing this study. It's on an arterial connector. It's right on Main Street. Access to and from the site was supported by the infrastructure there, 2 curb cuts. Line of sight is good in both directions, and there's a traffic light at the intersection of Churchill Road and 111. So in terms of access to the site, access is really good. The current site is supported by an assembly building, a church, which has, at times, depending on the programming and use, significant congregation. So it's not completely dissimilar to the proposed use, as opposed to at prior explorations where we were converting a residential property to a community use service. Finally, we looked at, could the program fit on the site? And we started the concept design exploration. Here is a survey prepared by the town of the parcel. And you can see that the survey has sort of a hammer shape. On the left is Main Street. And at the back of the site, to the right of the site, you can see there's a single rectory church, which is down at the bottom of the hill. And then behind that are some secondary parcels off to the right of the site. So the first concept that we put together, and I think you heard some of this, was to take a prior design and see if it fit on the site. This is a prior footprint of the Senior Community Center, which was explored over at Hardy Lane. We proposed maintaining 2 ingresses to the site, having parking at the front of the site, having an access entrance drive, which you can see here on the top side of the site, which would take you to the back of the site, where there would be a drop off at the lower side of the site, at the back of the site, and then parking behind the buildings. You can see that in this configuration, the active adult community is to the south of the property, and the Edgewood neighborhood is to the north of the property. So we've gone back and forth a number of times with the committee, and we've received a lot of feedback from some of the people that you heard this evening and some of the neighboring groups. And a lot of the comments were the footprint's too big, how are we addressing the buffers to the neighbors, what are the activities that are going to be on site. And we've taken a lot of that feedback to heart. Specifically in the size of the building, we've reduced the footprint of the building in a pretty significant way. We moved the building to the north and reduced it. So if you see the original concept, building north to south is much longer than the current iteration of the building. Shortened it, moved some of the program to the lower level. But in exercising that concept, we squeezed the building and turned it into essentially a 3-story building, because the concept maintained originally a full middle school sized gymnasium, which essentially had a high school sized court in one direction and 2 basketball courts in the opposite direction. We had 28 feet clear floor to floor, so that we met the true clearance requirements for CIAC basketball performance. And we had spectator seating. We had a walking track at a mid-level of the building. So the building maintained a lot of height, and the gymnasium was essentially submerged. So the building committee actually had a lot of discussion back and forth about what should that gymnasium space be, because the general public had real concerns about there being, for lack of better terms, AAU tournaments there, rec basketball there, high travel use to this site. At the same time, we were trying to take into consideration the seniors' need for a recreation activity space, particularly to support a couple pickleball courts and senior activities. So we looked at an alternative scheme that would put an activity space in the lower level of the building. We eliminated the mid-level, so now there was only 2 stories to the building, and reduced that activity space to only 18.5 or 19 feet of clearance. So we've reduced the height of that fairly significantly. It would still allow for pickleball and recreation events. We reduced the footprint of that space significantly so that there would be no formal bleachers. It doesn't mean that there couldn't be spectators or a row of standing participants or family members that bring their folding chairs to watch recreation activities, but it would still have the viability as a full footprint gymnasium space at the lower level. We also took into consideration the Parks and Rec director, or the senior center director's desire to relocate the drop-off of the building to the front of the building as opposed to the back of the building. So the program, and Rocco will go through the building with you, but most of the senior program is at the main level, and at the lower level is activity recreation space, exercise room, dance and fitness room, and the food pantry. So we relocated the drop-off in this concept design to the front, so it would be along the Main Street side of the site. So senior buses would drop off at this level, right at the senior activity level of the building. We also started to look at concepts for the lower level parking and access. There were concerns about the amount of parking that we were showing at the back of the site. And some of the discussions we had were, well, we want to right size that parking, make it appropriate for everyday use, and then have overflow or grass parking for any types of events where it got greater. So you can see in this diagram that half of the parking was considered hardscape, and then half of the parking was considered grassscape. So in the last 3 weeks, we've actually taken this most recent concept to a much higher level of detail. We've had our site civil engineers look at the site and put a concept together. And in this configuration, you can see that at the front of the site, we would have a drop-off area. It's one-way drive. We have parking on one side of that drive, so there'd be a covered entrance. This is the left side of this plan. The parking to the south of the site would remain basically untouched in configuration. So the existing easements that are there, the parking spaces that are there would remain. We've actually moved the building far enough to the north and away from the neighbors that all of the existing parking on that side of the site remains as it is. On the north side of the site, we would have a two-way entrance drive that went to the back of the building, provided access to accessible parking near the building, a drop-off lane at the lower level, and then hardscape parking. So this configuration shows approximately 100 hardscape parking spaces and then about 50 grass future parking spaces. Original estimates projected about 200 total parking spaces. So we've reduced the parking footprint pretty significantly from 200 hardscape to about 100 hardscape parking spaces. And that reflects the change of the gymnasium space from a true performance gymnasium space to just a recreation space. The committee discussed doing half a gym so that we could support a pickleball court or 2 pickleball courts. And of course, we reduced the height significantly. But at some point, there's a cost benefit associated with just providing the full footprint, and it seems to make sense to make the full footprint essentially in the basement of the building. The cost is relatively insignificant to have the full size footprint of the gym space, but the reduced height would still be there. We've also taken a hard look at what the potential infrastructure for the site might be. This is more technical in nature, but we started to look at where would the water and the electricity and the power come into the site, how would we get access to the sewer in Main Street, and then how would we deal with storm drainage. And in this configuration, we're showing putting the storm drainage all under a pervious parking lot. So the parking lot itself would have pervious holes so the water could run through it and then percolate into the soil beneath it. A very sustainable approach to building a parking area. And then we would leave the existing rear of the site to be essentially lawn area. And we are staying completely away from the regulated wetlands area. So you can see in this configuration at the far right of the site, there's a circle. That circle represents the 100-foot buffer to a small wetland area at the back of the site. Our proposed developments are well away from that and present no impact on the Quannock River Valley. We've also spent a significant amount of time looking at the buffers to the neighbors because we understand the neighbors have posted real concerns about the impact. The buffer has been changing. The neighbors are correct, because we've been taking their input, and every time we go back to them, we've considered many different things. We've talked about walls or fencing, combination of fencing and landscaping. But what this concept plan shows is a pretty significant buffer of greater than 20 feet at both sides of the parking area to the neighbors' property lines. And what this also shows, and you can see it in the diagram at the bottom of the page, is that the parking area actually sits down from the back of their property by 6 or 8 feet. So these cars would actually be sitting down, and their headlights would go into basically a hill as opposed to shining into their backyards. So we're proposing in this iteration a whole series of buffer elements, including tall grasses, planted vegetation screen, a little bit of fencing towards the higher side of the parking area. You can see where the drive comes down. There's fencing to the back of it. This is, again, a concept. It's still conceptually developed, but we're taking into strong consideration how can we develop the softest and most friendly buffer to the neighbors on both sides of the street, as well as create a new image for the street front. It was mentioned as a part of the plan that there are some mature trees. They just happen to fall right in the footprint of where the building wants to be, where we're showing the building. We believe strongly that the building, a public building of this nature, should maintain the street wall of Main Street. So it's to the front of the site, not to the back of the site. So the ends of the building have, one property abutter to the south and 2 property abutters to the north. And that's because we've pushed it right up against the Main Street wall. In exchange, for taking the trees that are in that footprint, we'd be proposing a whole new tree planting plan with street trees at Main Street, parking lot trees, and buffer trees on both sides of the site. Again, this is a concept. It's something that's going to develop as we continue to move forward, but I wanted you to know that we're making real progress and we're taking to heart the feedback that we're hearing from the general public. At this point, I think the biggest outstanding issue is what is the programming on the site and what are those hours. You can see in this diagram, just to the upper left-hand corner of the building, there's a black line that crosses the access road to the back of the building. We're proposing a security gate at that location, so the back of the site and the parking lot could be secured at any time to support flexibility in programming and timeframes for the back of the site. And then, the rear of the site, you can see, has an entrance patio. Rocco will talk a little bit about the building itself, but we're proposing a small amphitheater area outside of the activity area, and outside of the gym recreation space, and then an arts and crafts patio outside of the arts and crafts room, which is the north side of that patio space. You should note that this building is being tucked into the grade, and you'll see the rendering, so it's we're using the grade to the best of our ability. So from the Main Street side, the building is essentially a 1-story building. And from the back side, it becomes a 2-story building with some retaining walls that actually sister up against that patio space. So it makes the patio space more private and enclosed. With that, Rocco?
Mr. O'Carroll, before we pass the baton,
Yep.
Maybe the council has some questions. I just have a few maybe some preliminary questions. So the last rendering you had up there, the size of that structure, how do you compare that to what you brought over from Hardy Lane? Is this a smaller structure now?
So the building is about 2,000 square feet smaller than the Hardy Lane building. It's still at about, actually, was it 30 was the last number, or 33? 35. All right, so in simple terms, we've reduced the building, the total building size from 33,000 to 30,000 square feet. But the Hardy Lane building had a bigger footprint because the entire lower level of the building wasn't used. We're basically using the entire basement of this building, so we've consolidated the footprint of the building.
Okay, and these drawings you just presented this evening, when were these created, and were they available in the last committee meeting?
They were not. So these drawings were developed in the last 2 weeks. So over the holiday week, this drawing, and this drawing were developed in the last 2 weeks. So this is after the last meeting that we had with the building committee and heard public input. This is in response to that.
Okay, one last question for me. The orientation of this building, which is north-south to face Main Street, what would happen if you oriented it east-west?
So we looked at that, and physically the building fits on that site, but because the grade falls away from the Main Street side to the back of the side, it makes it almost impossible to create entrances on the long side of the site, and it pushes the parking further back into the site. Then we have to deal with the recreation space. Whether it's a full gym or a half gym, it's a big footprint element. So if we put it on basically the walkout side of the building, it creates no space for a common entrance. Because accessibility is of the utmost importance for a senior center, configuring it north-south gets us the most amount of accessible parking and gets us 2 accessible common entrances, one at the upper side and one at the lower side. So we have looked at it, but it's a much more efficient configuration and better plan this way.
And I don't see any outdoor activities on your drawing other than the patio.
So in this space, it's essentially patio space, and the amphitheater. On the main level, there is a small outdoor, basically porch. We'll show you that when you see the plan. That's above the arts and crafts room and directly off of the cafe space. So there's a small outdoor patio at the main level. We have not incorporated any outdoor recreation fields or lawns on this site. Any of the recreation would happen in the patio. We anticipate the design of that patio developing as the concept develops further.
Okay, and then just as I'm looking at this rendering, if you can clarify the driving area around the proposed building, is that there or is that not in the plan at this point?
I'm sorry, when you mean the driving area,
when
is it up? No. Oh.
There it is. So I'm looking at the curb cut on the northwest side.
Yep. So the curb cut on the north, there currently are 2 curb cuts on the site. The curb cut on the south is basically right where the existing curb cut is. We're just reconfiguring it and cleaning it up. The curb cut on the north, we are sliding it to the north a little bit by about 30 feet so that it skirts the end of the building and provides clean circulation path to the back of the site. So you would come in, so you could come into the site 2 ways, one on the south entrance, and then you would come in, there's parking on the right, And then there would be access to the parking in front of the building. So you turn left, you would go along the front of the building, and there would be a drive-under porte cochere there, protected access to the main senior center level, where the senior buses could pull under and discharge their passengers. And then that would intersect the north driveway. The north driveway is the one at the top of the site. And from there, you could either egress the site or you could turn right and go to the back of the site.
Can you drive around the building?
You cannot drive around the building, no. So you can get to all edges of the building, but you can't traverse the southeast corner. So the southeast corner, which is the bottom right of the building, because of the grade changes there, there's no way to make the full circuit.
Okay. Let me ask the council if there's questions. Mr. Shively, go ahead.
So I have a couple of questions. First of all, as far as the back overflow parking, you talked about that being permeable surface. Is that what you were saying? Is that a fair, accurate description or term to be used for
Yeah,
that?
there's lots of different terms, but the rear hardscape parking, which is shown here to the left of that sort of dark green.
Right, the
vertical
part that's
line,
past the dark green, right?
We would propose that as permeable parking, which is essentially pavers with gaps in between it, so
Right.
the water can.
So it's
run
going to help
between it.
with drainage and things like that as well, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And then beyond that, the overflow parking would be grass parking.
Just lawn parking.
Correct.
Okay, but no, like in the original plan, there was also a drive back around that comes back through the neighborhood. That would no longer exist. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that was actually removed.
Okay.
An earlier.
Right, that was one of the earlier
In
drive like that.
earliest
Yeah.
iteration
And
showed
side
a
too.
connection to that neighborhood, which, excuse me, those proposed connections. Again, this was a concept. The thought was it would make sense if there were some connections for, whether it be a public safety connection, for public safety only, or a pedestrian connection.
Right, but that's not in the plan as it stands today, right?
That's correct.
So all traffic would then come and go from Main Street, and there's the two curb cuts, the north and the south. And the south curb cut, are both two-way curb cuts, or do you plan on one being one way and the other being the main one on the north being two-way?
Currently, they're both two-way. They both
Okay.
exist as two-way.
They're big enough to be two-way at least.
They're big enough to be
But-
two-way.
But the determination could be changed depending on how they want to design the traffic flow.
That's correct.
Depending on the traffic study, which we obviously have to do anyway. So.
That's correct. And just for your edification, there's a traffic study that's underway. The traffic counts are actually starting this week. We didn't want to have the traffic counts done over the holiday
right?
weeks, Yeah.
And then finally, last one was this footprint of the building. It seems to me that, especially because it's been condensed and kind of made as efficient as humanly possible, it would be the same footprint, would it not, if it were just a senior center, or if it were a senior center / community center in off hours? I mean, it's basically the same footprint either way.
I would recommend it's the same footprint because the majority, and when you see the plan, you'll understand, the majority of the senior center functions are all on one floor, the upper floor. So if we remove the gymnasium, if we remove the
But we need the gymnasium for seniors anyway, right?
well, that's fine. I'm just saying that the senior center functions, could you physically split them and make it a two-story senior center? You could, but we've tried to keep all of the senior daily functions on one level. That's what we recommend primarily for senior center design. And then when we do have two-story facilities, and we have some, usually we separate the recreation activities. So senior dance and fitness classes, any kind of fitness or weightlifting room if you have one, we don't. Or any half gym or partial gym, we'll separate those and put those at the lower level and put all of the exercise type spaces together. So if this was just a senior center, yes, our recommendation would be to keep the footprint the same. So all the senior activities are on the first level, and then there would be some partial programming at the lower level, so you could have an entrance and lobby at the lower level of the building, and then some of the program elements like the food pantry could remain at that level, so social services could have a discrete entrance at that level.
So essentially, we're talking about we could theoretically break it up into two arguments, right? One is, do we build it this way? And then the other argument is, how do we use it, right? In a sense. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if this is the right time for this question, but the prevailing concern was use or fear of use for things other than seniors outside of typical hours and days. So let me back up for a second, and I appreciate the most recent drawings and how it has evolved over time. And I know there's more you have to show us. But I think, to cut to the chase, the biggest concern that you had heard during public comment was in terms of, is this a deceiving project that really is going to have all these community, non-senior specific uses? And I don't know if you should be the one answering that, but I think we're all waiting to hear clarification about that.
Well, at the end of the day, that's a community decision, and it may be beyond the jurisdiction even of the building committee, but we're doing senior centers and community centers across the state. We've done 30 of them, and in most cases, senior centers are now becoming community centers in name and title, because all of the spaces that are in a senior center, arts and crafts, entertaining spaces or stages or fitness, those are all spaces that can be used by more than just the community seniors. So the programming can extend well beyond regular hours and can be used for youth services, can be used for community meetings, Boy Scout troop meetings in the evenings. There's a plethora of uses that can be used. But some of our senior /community centers have gymnasiums, some have pools, and some don't. And that does have an impact on how it's used in the community. And in fairness, it does have an impact on, traffic and attendance. But there are other things that can control that, and that's programming. The big reason that a lot of communities want their community center to have a gym, and Dimitri will stand up and fight for this, is because the other gyms are controlled by the Board of Education. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, but there are a lot of restrictions that come with use, when you can use it, and that pertains mostly to the safety of our children using the schools. The schools have to be isolated during school activity hours. And then there's costs and operational issues as well. So to have a recreational asset that the town controls, Parks and Rec controls, and can be used more flexibly, is something every Parks and Rec director in the town wants. And I know it's something that Dimitri's, excited about. He voiced that at the last meeting, clearly. So that's the reason why a lot of communities want a community-owned gymnasium as opposed to a Board of Education-owned gymnasium. And that's really at the heart of the issue. This building can physically be developed with a quarter gym or a half gym or a full gym or a performance gym. Mr. Buswell, who is also liaison to the committee, made some good points in the conversation. Is, well, if we can't develop it as a full performance, spectator gym with all the bells and whistles, then does it make sense? And that's why the committee started looking at different reduce options. And we looked at an option that reduced the gym down to just 2 pickleball courts and reduced height. and that made some sense. But from a dollars and cents standpoint, it made good sense to keep the reduced height, but just expand the footprint to the full basement, just because you're already building the basement. So there's a lot of questions about, the gym itself, but just so you understand, CIAC requirements for a basketball gym for high school performance is 24 feet clear. That's also applies to like high school volleyball and even college volleyball. I believe the NBA requirement for clearance is 23 feet, or NCAA requirements 23 clear. We don't have nearly that. We have 19 feet. So this is, at this point, yes, it's a big recreation space and it's an asset for the town for recreation functions. But it's not going to support AAU basketball tournaments. It's not going to do that.
Scottiano, do you have a question?
I did, thank you, through the chair. Just quickly, how many parking spaces exist, if you know, at the current Grace Church property? And if you don't, that's fine, we can follow up.
I don't have that number because it's not lined. It's basically open parking and it's a free-for-all. We could do that assessment.
I would just be curious what, the capacity, right?
This is going to be more.
This will be more.
Yeah, it will be more. And I'm not, when I say that was an assembly space and this is an assembly space, they're not apples to apples.
No.
This will get used during the daytime. This will have senior center functions, and on a daily basis, the current senior center has, I think, 40 or 50 spots, and that includes on-site park spots. So on a day-to-day basis, the actual usage isn't going to be 100 cars. The goal is to try and find the right sweet spot between, how many spots should we pave and how many spots should be.
Yeah, I like the
paved.
new plan where it's got both opportunities, right? You don't want people to end up parking on side streets in the name of needing space, right? That's not what we want to have happen.
Agreed. And I think what's really important is that you understand this is a work in progress. Our exercise shows that the site is viable and it's a good location, particularly for the senior center. We've been studying this for 10 years. The location is pretty central to the community. It's central to the residential demographic. It's walkable to downtown. There's so many good things, about the site, but it's a work in progress. We're trying to listen to the feedback that we're getting. I don't have an answer about the gym and should there be a full gym or not a full gym. At the end of the day, I'm going to ask you guys to answer that question. What should be there? Maybe you.
And we will answer that for you.
Maybe the council needs the
Mr.
feedback.
Dorsey and then Mr. Marsh.
Hey, how you doing? In the rendering that you have right now, one of the pieces of feedback I heard is about traffic flow and attendance. At full capacity, if there was full use of this center, how many people can fit in that building?
Well, that's a loaded question, but no, it's a fair question.
Yeah.
It's a fair question. So I'm going to steal some of Rocco's thunder here, but so we've designed the multi-purpose room. This is the upper senior center floor plan. We've designed the multi-purpose room so it could seat 200 people. It's highly unlikely from a programming perspective that you would have a 200-seat event for Thanksgiving dinner and have the rest of the facility programmed fully. So at any sort of given time, I think the maximum, sort of a realistic event would be 200 people. But that's not, an everyday event by any means. And Michelle Jacob would have to come back and talk about the programming. But on a day-to-day basis, it's, 40, 50 people for lunch. Many of those are coming in on the senior bus or dial-a-ride. or ride share. You have a couple people, maybe 2 classrooms, with different programs, but you get interchange programming. So people come to the center for a couple classes or a lecture, and then they'll have lunch, and then they might go to exercise class. So on a day-to-day basis, call it, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. or 3 p.m., the attendance is, I think, closer to 100 people total for the whole day.
Okay, Mr. Marsh?
Thank you, through the chair. Tom, you mentioned an amphitheater space and understanding the concerns of the neighbors. What do you think, or explain what that means? Is I'm hoping it's not we're going to have amplified noise and performances and all that stuff. What is an amphitheater in this model?
So in this model, it is a recessed area 3 feet below the patio, and it has some stairs out of the patio. Again, I'll show you what. So this is what the lower level floor plan looks like, and in order to accommodate the 18.5 feet in the recreation room, or let's call it a gym for this conversation, we want to have doors that directly egress that space. Because of the way the grade works, we exit the building a little bit below grade. So this exit area, we're proposing to turn it into an outdoor classroom, a small amphitheater. You could see there would be, basically 6 steps up out of the space. So you could have a small group there, or outdoor classroom or performance. But this is not a band shell or a music venue. We can call it outdoor activity area. I call it amphitheater because it's shaped that way, but if I've confused you, I apologize.
I think it's a patio.
Patio, yeah.
Miss
there you go.
Winchell.
Thank you. In drawings from the past, I know that there was a driveway that came in on the south part and went to the neighbors next door. That was part of the Christ Church setup. Have you made any arrangements for that driveway or taken care of that somehow?
So in this current configuration of the site plan, we're leaving the south side of the south parking area as is. We would just basically repave it and clean it up. There currently is an easement to the neighbor on the south side who has basically parking and access to that because they don't have a driveway.
Yeah.
There are conversations going on, I'm aware of, between that neighbor and the town attorney. I don't know how they've developed, but we've left that area comfortable enough so that we could accommodate some changes. If there was going to be space deeded for a driveway, we could accommodate that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Foreman, go ahead.
Thank you. Regarding the parking, you mentioned that in the back it's going to be a little bit more recessed to prevent lights shining in. How do you envision the rest of the lighting, whether it be street lamps or something like that? Are there height requirements? Is there a certain type of lighting that can help maintain sort of the integrity and existing lighting in Beatles back?
Yeah, so there are all different types of lighting schemes. It's more common than not today to go with more lower height fixtures than fewer very tall fixtures. All the fixtures would have to be dark sky compliant. We would have to light the parking lot to minimum planning and zoning requirements, which is usually no more than 1 foot candle at the perimeter with no light bleed to the neighbors. So none of the light from any of the light fixtures that we put in the site could actually bleed onto the neighbor's property. And all the light fixtures would have to be cut off light fixtures so you couldn't see the light element itself. But we don't have a lighting plan. We're not that far along. but we would propose low fixtures, like, 10-foot high fixtures, and then space them accordingly so that we could get the lighting that we need. We could explore different options like bollards at the perimeter of the parking lot to provide lower lighting at that perimeter.
Are we ready for Rocco?
Yeah, why not, please?
Mike, you have a question? Go ahead, Mike. Blesswell.
Tom, I just had a question. When the project was still at Hardy Lane, what was the final dollar amount that you gave us? If we kept it at Hardy Lane?
I don't remember the exact number, but the magnitude was 25.
Okay.
I think 20 was hard cost and 5 was soft cost.
So 3 years ago, when I entered, when I went on the building committee, I'd mentioned the opportunity to buy InSports. It's a $100,000 for-profits facility in the top of Trumbull. We were too far invested into Hardy Lane to make that an option. We could have bought that property for at least half, maybe a third of what it would be for this new construction cost. And InSports is a 100,000 square foot sports and recreation facility that could have served as a community center and a senior center. So at our last meeting, when some of the other colleagues said to me on our committee that I was being short-sighted about the gym, I used to be the general manager at InSports. I understand the for-profit, especially the basketball component of courts and how to utilize recreational space. My point is, we have 10 gymnasiums in Trumbull right now, 6 elementary, 2 middle school, 2 at Trumbull High School. There are many nights those gyms are dark. We could be doing a lot more recreation activity if our school administration and our town administration were talking amongst each other. That is my feeling about the gym. So when you mentioned my name before, I'm not against gym. I coached high school basketball for 18 years. I love gym. I love gymnasiums, but my point is my kids already go to Daniels Farm for rec in the size of a gym that we're proposing right here, where I have this much room between sitting from the out of bounds line to the wall. So that was my feeling. If we're not going to build a larger gymnasium, what was the point of building a smaller one?
That's fair. I didn't mean to speak for you. I apologize. Either way, in this particular issue, the building committee might be served well by some direction from the town council. Sorry, Rocco.
Before Rocco, may I just jump in for one, if that's okay, Carl, really quickly?
Go ahead,
Just
Lori.
particularly regarding the gym. There's been a lot of conversation. I don't ever recall it in sports conversation, so that was beyond our committee's conversation, but the gym is still an integral part of the senior center. So looking at this as what size, then that's a discussion, but I think this isn't a request from Parks and Rec to build a gym. It is a senior center request and has been from the beginning. I don't want to lose sight of that with all this. I think there's ways, as we keep saying, there's a process to that, but not for 1 second do I want to forget that the seniors need a gym. And that's been clear from the very beginning by both our director, from the beginning of this project in all of its iterations through lots of community needs to Les. I just really want to make it clear that no matter where we end up going, the seniors need a gym.
Yeah, we understand that now. We didn't before.
Okay.
Well, I think, we're getting a picture.
Thank you, Mr.
Sarah.
Chairman. I just wanted to make just a point about some of the things that are being said here, sort of out of context. I think we need to be careful about conversations that may have been had or not had, and people saying things that may not be quite true. And that the public, unfortunately, just because of the way things are done, are not involved in certain conversations. And not to say that we're hiding any information. Certainly I have never not done that, and I think people know that over the past 7 years, that's not who I am. As far as in sports goes and conversations between the Board of Ed and the town, there have been a multitude of conversations between the Board of Education and the town about using gym space in this community. And I think that Tom spoke eloquently about the fact that that's not an easy conversation. We don't have control. The town does not have control over the Board of Ed buildings. The Board of Ed does. And there isn't always, I'm not going to say that there isn't a lot of cooperation. I think we do cooperate with one another. But I don't want false information out there that there's not these conversations, because there is conversations. And about in sports, I'm not going to go there, because I think it was maybe before my time. Everybody who goes to InSports with their kids, and my kids were too old by the time that InSports became a place to go, knows about the parking at InSports. The parking is frightening at InSports. It's just the way it is. So we could talk about that another time, but I do want people to know that we have to have the right information out here for the public. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And, we're here to hear from our committee because there is a lot of rumbling out there, and it's time for the council to hear from the committee, set things straight, see where we are today, and I think we're delivering on that goal tonight. You're up.
I'm up. All right. Rocco Petito, project architect for QA&M Architecture. So I'm here to show you kind of the floor plan design and some of the elevations of the building. The top of the page is what faces Main Street, and then of course the bottom of the page would be the building facing east toward the Pequannock Valley. So the main entrance, you see the vestibule kind of towards I guess would be the right of the building. It's kind of off center of the building now. The bigger building actually was in the middle, but you come into the vestibule, you come by the administration services. There's also a library lounge where there's soft seating, fireplace, someplace where the seniors could come and sit and maybe wait for a ride, or a comfortable place to be when they get there. As you walk straight in towards the purple room there, you see the games room, and then adjacent to or below the admin and youth services, you have a conference room that could be used either by the admin or by anybody else who would come in to sign it out. If we head what would be south or to the left of the page, you're going to see the big purple multi-purpose room that Tom was talking about earlier. It's about 2,600 square feet total, which can be divisible by 3. So there's actually will be these movable partitions that will be able to separate it, so you would be able to mix up the uses during the day. So you could have a lunch going on near where the kitchen is off that area, and then having either some sort of performance or some other conference, something that the senior center would be able to split up. Towards the top of the page now in the blue run, you have some activity classrooms, which could be used for many things. That room is also divisible. And then if we go back to kind of the main lobby down through the hallway, where we intend that there be some soft seating there would be other spaces for seniors and other constituents to kind of gather. You have a main stair, a grand stair that would go down to the lower level, and then you see there's a patio that's to the right, that's directly off basically this cafe space. That's also a queuing space into the multi-purpose room. And then the lower level, so you'd either get here either by coming down the stairs, by going down the elevator, or coming around from the back side of the building. The big blue room is an arts and crafts room. That's on the north side of the building, so there's better light on that side for arts. They also have access to the arts patio on the outside, so there could be, space out there for painting, for doing arts and crafts during the good months. Then you transfer across the hallway to the food pantry that has both a discrete entrance, but also has, kind of a grander entrance off the patio. the thought from this was that they could actually do kind of a market almost during the summer months, you know, and then you go up the hallway, we get to a ramp that brings you down to the lower level of the exercise and activity space, and that's how we were able to kind of get more space in that gym without actually increasing the height of the building from what we were showing before. And then off of that space is another fitness area, whether it be an exercise dance area or someplace where there might be weight machines or weights and that type of fitness equipment. And then if we travel back towards the east out of the gym, you can see that kind of outdoor activity area that Tom was talking to, where they could actually have a yoga class or some other type of group function outside. And so this is kind of a model of what the site would look like looking from a bird's eye view from the west. You can see that from Main Street, it basically keeps a one-story look. This is a little closer up. So as far as the height of the building relative to the church that's there now, the eave height across the building as it stands is a little higher. So the church is about 12 feet off the ground. This is about 14 feet. But the ridge of the building is about 5 or 6 feet lower than the church is now. So the ridge height of this is about the same height as what the daycare or kindergarten building that's next door. This is looking from the east, so you can see we've kind of carved out where the parking area is to get that kind of height through the back of the building. And then here's kind of an aerial view. You can kind of look into that kind of depressed area when you come out the gym. And that's a quick view of the architecture. Yeah, this is about as close as I have right now, but you can see the houses are. Oh, they are, okay. Yeah.
Just a couple quick questions to the chair. On that floor plan, on the lower level, you had the vestibule there. Isn't that vestibule is just on the top floor though, right? Or is it, there's not an exit or an entrance on the front vestibule area, right?
There's a vestibule on the
Or is that the vestibule? That's the rear. That's
That's
okay,
the
never
rear,
mind. I was
yeah.
confused.
There's a
Okay.
vestibule
All
down
right. Yeah, great. Okay. And then the other question was, I see this is multiple toilets for multiple people. I think all three of the ones upstairs are single use. Is that correct?
No, there's a
Or is there a
multi-use
multiple
toilet room.
Where's
right
I
next to
missed-
the lobby as you come in, just down below the library lounge area.
Oh, I didn't see that. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, we had a warming trend moment there. Any other questions? I think we've had a very good presentation tonight. A lot of information. We feel much more updated. I know I do. I hope the community who's remaining here or who watches this later. I would personally ask that all of these renderings, drawings be immediately filed. They will be with our minutes. So if you can send us electronic copies to the council clerk.
Yep, no problem.
She'll get it right up. And obviously the building committee should get this into their records as well. Are we good here? Go ahead, Ms. Satin.
I just want to say thank you to Lori and to your committee because you have a thankless job. I wouldn't lie.
Thank you.
But the hours that you guys put into this over and over and over again, and the volunteer work that goes into this, we're very grateful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate that. Carl, if I could, I know last time you talked about kind of a timeline or at least next steps. So
My
I'd like
next
to
question.
just go where I figured it would be.
Go for it.
Yeah. So just, and this is all according to building committee rules. We're just trying to get them into play and how they can kind of work out. Obviously, our next meeting will be Wednesday. We'll be discussing this, some of these revisions again this coming Wednesday. As Tom mentioned, the traffic study will be taking place, I believe, over the next week. That probably takes almost about a month before the report actually comes through. So we'll be looking forward to what that shows us. After that, the revisions will be completed and cost estimating can begin. Until we're really set on the exact discussions here, the cost estimating will start then. Tom and Rocco, ideally, and maybe some of the committee members will be meeting with some of the pertinent town departments just for any other input from them beyond you guys. That's always important to have. We're hoping to do that at the end of the month. We'll next have to meet with the fire marshal as part of building committee rules and get her input. Ideally, in February, we'll be going to the traffic authority, which is the police commission, getting their report, their input, which will give you guys even more information that you'll be needing. And then after that, being able to go to planning and zoning for an 824 hearing once all those pieces are in place. By then, cost estimates should be able to be completed, and we'll have some final reviews from our committee to be able to come back with you guys with more complete information beyond the 10 of 10 information that we have now, but we're really more specific. So those are the next steps according to building committee rules. If there's anything else you think we need to be added into that or any other timeline that you see fit, please let us know. Any input from tonight's meeting, we're welcome, as always, to any and all input. I hope that the understanding is that we are trying to listen to all and keeping our goal in mind, which has been going on for 10 years now, and that hopefully we're moving in the right direction in doing that.
So the final step in all of this is a public referendum.
Right. And so that, my understanding, and I hope I have it right, is that Board of Finance would have to come up with to say that they'll approve a certain amount of money, and then you guys decide what that referendum question looks like. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
We also have to give you more funding approval, so
right.
Everything is going to come into this room. We'll just figure out when. So it sounds like you're making pretty good progress. I don't think we've approved formally a site, what do you call them? Final plans.
Right. So that
your
is
professionals
part of that whole
and
process,
so forth.
Right.
So, but based on what I saw tonight, you're much farther along than you were a short time ago.
We were. Okay. I mean, the same concepts have really been here from the beginning. It's just really having these guys work hard and get it together. But as I said, any input from what you've heard tonight would be much appreciated as we're really starting to really finalize what we'd like to present.
Okay. Anybody on the council for Lori? All right, then we'll end this. Go ahead.
Or,
Say
okay,
that. Go
wait,
ahead.
in terms of more like, this is sort of selfishly so that I can tell my husband where he's supposed to be. So your meetings, right, you're having one on January 8th here. The next one after that would be in February 12th.
That's the
second Wednesday in
Yes,
February.
unless
So
there's some reason, and I
Snow,
should have
whatever,
added that in. If there's some reason that there's some decision that has to be made that these guys need, we can always call a special meeting. But our regular meetings are the second Wednesday, right? The second Wednesday of every month, yes.
And so the idea is that the traffic study is being done this week, so you would get to the police commissioner in like February or March?
Ideally in February, and we
Okay.
think that traffic report will be done by the end of January. So we'd really like their input, sooner rather than later, should
Yeah.
any changes have to happen. And my understanding is they have to have a report that is submitted to you guys.
Right. Okay.
Okay,
Thanks.
so
It's on
I'll
a
let-
state
I'll let
road.
Matt know.
It's on a
Yeah.
state road as well, so the police commission will have to deal with that
Exactly,
aspect.
exactly.
The curb cuts are
Yes.
their
yeah,
jurisdiction,
which-
I think.
All that kind of language that I never thought I'd hear about, but yes, these guys are very versed in it, and
Yes.
hopefully all that will go.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, QA&M. Thank you, residents, for hanging in there I hope you learned a lot tonight. We're listening. We're going to take a very short recess before we get to the business portion of our meeting. Yeah, we got it now. All right. Thank you, our technical director, Dennis, back there. All right, we're going to go back on the record now for our meeting. Since it's almost 2026, we should finish the 2025 business of January 1st.
Yes, I did.
If it's okay with council members, as we proceed through our resolutions, if we can agree by unanimous consent to waive reading of our committee minutes.
No objection.
There's no objection. Okay, those readings will be waived. Little housekeeping. Item 9, Resolution TC 30-116. I'll entertain a motion to take that out of order and postpone it to the February meeting.
So moved. Second.
I love when a plan comes together. Are we all in favor? Thank you. No objections. It's unanimous. One down. All right. Let us, again, by motion, to take the last item, Resolution TC 30-119, out of order. Is there a motion?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? I didn't think so. All right, let's bring that to the floor. Mr. Colohan, would you read Resolution TC 30-119, please?
Resolution TC 30-119, be it resolved that the acquisition of approximately 9.8 acres of real property at Shelton Road, Trumbull, Connecticut, map K0800055 from the state of Connecticut for $262,000 is hereby approved, and be it further resolved that First Selectman Vicky A. Tesoro is hereby authorized to execute any agreements or take any necessary steps to complete the acquisition.
Second.
Thank you. Since we're not reading the committee report, I will like to entertain a motion to amend this resolution to change the price from $262,000 to $256,000. Is there such a motion? Ms. Satin, second. Verizon, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. We have the resolution as amended. I think we're all familiar with the proposed acquisition. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of Resolution TC 30-119 as amended, please raise your hands. Thank you. Anybody opposed? It is unanimous. I'll entertain a motion to take items 10. Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry. I didn't
Make
read
a motion
I
for
didn't
the-
read the minutes.
Emergency legislation.
Thank you.
Second, Joy Colon.
All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? What a troop. All right, I'll entertain a motion to take items 10 and 11 out of order and in that order.
Make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All righty. Now, I'd like a motion as to item 10, Resolution TC 30-117. I'll entertain a motion and a second to read the title of this resolution in its entirety and to waive the reading of the remainder of the resolution, incorporating its full text into the minutes of this meeting. Thank you. Second. All in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. All right. So somebody needs to read Resolution the title of Resolution TC 30-117. Ms. Sather, would you read that, please?
Resolution appropriating Resolution TC 30-117. Resolution appropriating $5,995,000 for the Trumbull Board of Education Capital Improvement Plan 2025-2026, and authorizing issuance of $5,995,000 bonds of the town to meet said appropriation and pending the issuance thereof, the making of temporary borrowing for such purpose.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Yeah, okay. All right. We're on. Let's see. Any discussion on this bonding request for the Board of Ed? We have Mr. Dion.
Dion.
Kevin
Dion, Director of
All right.
Operations.
Close. Any questions? Go ahead. Mr. Dorsey.
Hi, Kevin. How are you? There are, in the Board of Ed bonding request, there are two line items for bathroom maintenance, one at Tash Road, one at Daniels Farms. both for $75,000. Can you just walk through what's the request for?
So, again, and a lot of this capital is for repairs. It's really not upgrades. We're just keeping the buildings going as we need to. We're seeing a lot of failures in our sinks. We're seeing failures in our toilets. We're seeing drain issues. We're seeing all new fixtures and hardware. So as we go through the building, that would be the money just to. We're not renovating the bathrooms. We're just taking what physically is in there for the hardware and updating that so that we continue with flow and doing what we can to keep the building going.
Any other questions on this, Mr. Cinto?
Yeah, the other night I asked you how many people work at the Long Hill Administration Building. Able to find that out?
You are going to find that out, yes. I did do the work. 49 staff members. That number does fluctuate, though, because we do have a support staff that comes in for educators, so they may work in and out of the building. But there's about 49 every day. There are 31 offices. There's a 20,000 square foot building. And again, Long Hill was originally built in 1920. Its last renovation major was about 1980. So again, I agree with everyone that it is an old building. It does need money put into it or a future decision be made about that building. And we're open to any discussions for that. But for now, we do have leaks. We do have to keep 49 people environmentally controlled with heat and cooling and water. So that's what most of the money goes into out of our operating budget for that building.
Ms. Sather.
Hi. The other day, with the agri-science, there was the discussion about like applying for a grant. So my only if the work gets done and then we apply for the grant, is the state going to say too bad?
Well, we can always apply for the grant.
Okay.
We're
You don't have to
school
do that
system,
beforehand?
Excuse me?
You don't don't you usually have to apply for a grant before the work starts, and then is that?
Usually we apply for the reimbursement,
Okay.
but time is of the essence with this. As I said, we went through last year. We were able to move the animals out. We did not have any programming. It is a $300,000 item, so it is a large item. And so our thought process on this, we can always go for the reimbursement, but we can at least get things going and we can find out from the state pretty quickly whether, again, their answer was a non-answer, I'm sorry, but their answer was we'll put the application in and we'll let you know if you qualify for that. So it's not like a usual school building where we get the percentage for the non-priority grants.
Ms. Satin?
Hi, thank you. Speaking of grants, in post-COVID, during COVID, there was a lot of money floating out there for HVAC work, right? Is there still money out there available to go after, or is that all
Not-
related to COVID funding?
Yeah, not this year. 2 years in a row, they had an indoor air quality grant. That is actually what part of Middlebrook is being done under. That work is being done this summer. Unfortunately, that grant came out 2 years in a row in the falls, between September and December. It was 23 and 22. They did not do it again in 24. So currently, there is no indoor air quality grant. And unfortunately, air conditioning upgrades are not covered under your usual DAS construction grants. So that was what that grant was there to supplement because it's not authorized. We can't go for a grant for air conditioning for that. So currently, no, there is no money.
Isaac?
Can you just hit the button? Thank you. For this stadium, I know that's one that is quite expensive and has been going through a lot of timelines there. We didn't have a bid in the package for this year, so I went back and looked at last year, and it was, and I know you weren't here at that time, and it was about 700,000-ish, a little under that. I know at the Board of Finance meeting, and obviously that would escalate over another year, but at the Board of Finance meeting, they were talking about the fencing and said it was the perimeter fencing, I believe, was the one that needed to be done. Was the interior, I haven't been over there, was the interior fencing
The
done?
interior has mostly been done. Mike King, our athletic director, is actually here to speak to the stadium.
So, yeah, so the ones, so I was just curious about, because it was part of that 800,000, the track perimeter, stadium exterior, which I believe is part of that, and then the handicap walkway fencing. Were two of those done with this other project?
No, one was. So essentially what we did in phase one, what took place over the summer, was from the track fence in. When we were asked to break this up into 2 years, into 2 phases, we basically did from the track fence in. So the fence that's immediately around the track was replaced, and that's all new. The track was replaced, the artificial turf field was replaced, and then the D zones were converted from grass to track material. We did a slight bit of paving in phase one. In the north end, we put a walking path from the school side to the home side, and we did the ramp, which we call the team ramp, coming up. So the handicap ramp and railing would be done in phase two, and the exterior fence around the whole thing would be in phase two.
Okay, so I was just curious the pricing, because the interior was 140 in the last bid. And you don't have to get into, I'm just curious if that was done, and it still seems like 800,000. And then I know for safety for the lacrosse wall, but 150 for that seems excessive. I don't know them, I don't bid them out. But I'm just curious, are we going for like the cream of the crop, and we could get something, put it in the proper place, but not spend 150,000?
So the location there is ideal because it is up on the field, and we'll have the fencing all around it, and it's kind of isolated, which is great. The wall, it's a big wall. When we designed it, the idea was to try to get enough for 30 lacrosse kids to throw at one time, to have about 20 kids for soccer be able to use it, and be able to have the ice hockey kids use it. So it's in the shape of a capital letter I. It's about 40 feet long and 10 feet high. Around it will be synthetic surface with an artificial ice in the middle of it, so that it can be used by a lot of the different groups. The artificial ice was not a big ticket item. And, I was asked last week if this is something that, will last 20 years. I think it will last far beyond that.
It's a lot. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Mecca?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike, could you elaborate a little bit more for those people who aren't aware of what, in lieu of having a wall, what are students doing? And how is that a safety issue? Thank you.
Yeah, so the wall will be used more often out of season than in season by athletes, right? So athletes are always looking for a place to practice by themselves when they're not with their team. And it gives them an opportunity to practice basic skills. So right now, there are not many viable options at the high school property. So the majority of the kids are throwing or kicking or whatever they're doing, whatever sport it is, field hockey, soccer, lacrosse, against the Ox Gym wall, which is an area from about me to that wall with the road behind it, the access road where the buses park. So they're throwing or kicking against that wall in a small area, smaller than this room from this point forward. Which is why Coach Arganese, was concerned about the safety issue when they go and retrieve the ball. They have to go into an area with cars. I'm also concerned about the cars getting hit, which sometimes does happen with the various athletes using that area. The wall gives kids a place to go and practice. Will teams use it? The answer is yes. I don't think the hockey team will ever use it. There'll be an individual thing because we have one, sheet of ice that probably 3 people can use. And during the middle of the winter, I don't think they're going to be out there during hockey season. But our lacrosse team was out today after school. The soccer kids are constantly doing that. Field hockey kids are constantly looking for a place. And the location inside McDougal is kind of ideal. And that's the only part of the project in the north end that we didn't complete. Now, the rest of the work is going to mostly be in the south end. So the south end is the end closer to Hillcrest by the scoreboard and by the concession stand and the bathrooms. There's a ton of paving that needs to go on there, especially with the relocation of the track fence, which is now closer to the track in a lot of areas. And the idea is to redo the ramp, which is the entrance from Hillcrest, put a formal ticket booth there, so we're not selling thousands of dollars of tickets with just a little cardboard, like a little folding table and a cash box on top, to put some lighting there, to pave the areas that get muddy and are not level, to change the grade slightly in some of those places, to give the ambulance a place to park so they're not going to get stuck in the mud and spin their tires, which happens a couple times every year. And so the spectators standing along the fence aren't standing in mud, and so there's a lot less maintenance. So that is basically happening in that south end. We also put off in phase one, because it just made sense, there's going to be a water line run from the bathrooms to the home side. So initially we were going to do that last year, but it didn't make sense if we were going to be doing that work this year. And then in phase one, we have conduit making it under the field and under the track to the other side of the field, kind of where towards the press box, towards the ticket booth rather, for conduit for speaker wire so we can have speakers on the other side of the stadium. If you've been to McDougal Stadium, you know that the sound system is antiquated and it's only on one side. And you're not going to get good sound until you get that on both sides. So we went so far and then stopped because we didn't want to have to go under asphalt that was going to be dug up a year later and then cut through it and then patch it. So we put that off to phase two as well. And then the handicap area you mentioned will all be repaved. And right now, a lot of that ramp doesn't have any railing. And the railing that is there is an old fence that doesn't meet code. So it will now meet all ADA, it'll be ADA compliant after this renovation. And then there'll be some additional paving down by the existing ticket booth, which is all grass and gets muddy and people are standing in line kind of getting dirty.
For safety, I'm just checking the price.
Yeah, just so you know what that 800,000 is getting you. The other thing that, we learned from the construction project this year, we put a drain in from the home visitor side on the north end to stop water from coming down and across the track and into the field, bringing sediment with it into the field. The drain that they put in is working great and is stopping the water from coming. The water, though, is still coming from under the bleachers. So we're going to extend the drain across the whole home side of the field so that none of that water can get in. And what's nice is the outflow is already there, so we just have to tap into what they already did and just extend it and run it the length instead of about a third.
Mr. Dorsey?
Am I just all the work you did last year was great. My son played football on that field. It was well attended, and I think it does represent the town well. If this is approved, what is the timing for the second phase of construction, and will there be any impact to any sports, any teams or sports?
The company is ready to come in right after graduation, just like they did. The scope of the work is less. The timeline will be shorter. There will be a little inconvenience over the summer, similar to what we had last year, but shorter. The good news is that for most of it, we'll be able to still use the facility. So that's the beauty of putting the track fence in. If they're working if they're paving the ramp by Hillcrest, there'll be a fence separating any work and any use of the field. So we'll still be able to use the field. There will be some headaches. We'll have to shuffle a couple days, but for most of the summer, I think we'll be able to do a lot of programming on the field still.
Any other questions? All right, so before I call for a vote, I just wanted to note that the resolution amount is the amount that as was reduced by the Board of Finance after their meeting on this topic. We do have the ability to restore monies that they cut. It would take 2/3 of us to vote. The only item that I think I recognize was $450,000 for the Long Hill building, which is, they're already getting in this amount some money for limited purposes. So to point that out. I also wanted to point out our finance director sent us an email today with the bonding maturity debt that's coming off, so we can have that perspective of what we're putting on and the netting out All right. Mr. Cinto?
Yeah, can we just have Maria on the record tell us exactly what the money's coming off? Because I didn't get the chance to see the email.
Can you give us just a quick rundown of this fiscal year ending and next fiscal year, what's coming off in terms of bonded debt?
For fiscal year 2025, there'll be $13,379,859 coming off. Fiscal year 2026, $14,236,990. Fiscal year 2027, $13,510,145. Any more years? Do you need 5 years?
Say the 25, the last three numbers, 79.
859.
Thank you.
$13,510,145.
Thank you for sending that email. Just in terms of the amount of bonded debt coming off, is any portion of that for enterprise bonding?
No, this is strictly.
That's strictly
just
town side?
Town side.
Okay.
And the 25% for the sewer, because the general
Right,
fund's
right.
still responsible for 25.
There's a little piece of the sewer bonds. Okay. Everybody got that? Any more questions on this resolution? Mr. Cinto?
Maria, normally in the past, we just created more debt by what we took off in the past, correct? Because the last couple of years have been going like, we retired 13, we spent 13.
Yeah, pretty
Approximately, give or much. But this year, we're up to about, what, 20?
Yes, but keep in mind, the authorization doesn't necessarily mean you're
Mean
going
it's
to borrow
20.
that all at the same time.
Right, right.
We borrow as the project is completed.
No, I'm just trying to keep in perspective because the school
Right.
is going to start eating into this.
Yeah, I sent a schedule today, and the schedule I provided today also includes, if we go through with Hillcrest, based on the plan that we have, it's going to be funded over 3 years. And the first impact will be in 2027, which would be another $875,000. Do you want those figures?
No.
You only got 2 more years to go. We might as well say them.
Yeah, so
Swallow hard, but then say them.
fiscal year 2027 with the Hillcrest will be $14,385,145 versus $13,005,000. For fiscal year 2028, without the school is $12,418,000. With the school is another $1,250,000, which is $15,486,843. And fiscal year 2029, without the school, it's $11,006,000. With the school, it's $17 million. Round numbers.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks. That's okay. The skyscrapers that are coming are going to cover this, so not to worry. All right. Anything else on this resolution? All right. I'd like to call for a vote then on resolution TC 30-117. All in favor? Thank you. Is there anybody opposed? No abstentions? Okay, that carries unanimously. I will entertain a motion to introduce resolution TC 30-118 by reading the title of said resolution in its entirety and waiving the reading of the remainder of the resolution, incorporating its full text into the minutes of this meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Did you get that? Are we all in favor? Is there anybody opposed? No way. All right, that's unanimous. Thank you. So let's, Mr. Shively, would you put this on the floor? Please read the title.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Resolution TC 30-118, resolution appropriating $13,940,000 for the Trumbull Town Capital Improvement Plan 2025-2026, and authorizing the issuance of $13,940,000 bonds of the town to meet said appropriation, and pending the issuance thereof, the making of temporary borrowings for such purpose. Full resolution attached.
Second, Joy Colon.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have a second? You got the second? Very good. You're ahead of the game. All right, we're not reading these lengthy minutes, but we have Mr. Estrada present. Is there any update to any of that?
No, Mr. Chair. I am here to answer any questions that you may have.
I did have a question. I don't remember where it came from, but there was $100,000 bonds for townwide security. If you're at liberty to explain what townwide security
That is, as we upgrade, especially surveillance cameras in town hall, add additional ones in strategic locations. Most recently, we installed, after community requests for additional security at beaches, the parking lot there, we've installed cameras that will assist the police department in monitoring that site because there were activities at night that we were trying to get a handle on. So that's the type of investment that $100,000 goes into.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have questions? I will note that there's a couple $1 million as part of this, which is we're authorizing for the WPCA, an enterprise fund, and the payers of those rates will pay those bonds. If I have that right. All right. Ms. Lenzen?
Yes. Can you just briefly review a little bit about the Indian Ledge Sprinkler Park replacement? I know that we are doing or have already done quite a bit of work to put a sprinkler park in at Tashua and also to take care of the one over at Beaches. So can you talk a little bit about the Indian Ledge?
Absolutely. The Indian Ledge splash pad is a renovation. It will replace that splash pad, which was the first one installed in Trumbull. So it's not the addition of an amenity, it's the replacement of an amenity that has now failed. We've been really holding that together with elastic bands the last couple of years just to keep it going. It's one of the amenities that opens first for children in the town of Trumbull because it has open access. The Tashua kiddie pool that now it will be converted to a splash pad because that is what parents like more than having an actual depth of water. That one won't open until the pool opens later on in the season. So that Indian Ledge one is usually the first amenity that opens in town. And it's really for toddlers. If you go there at any given time during the day, during the summer, that's always in use. There are multiple families using that at all times, and the playground adjacent to it was renovated a couple of years ago. So it's really a beautiful little space.
Yeah, I do remember advocating for the renovation of that playground several years ago when my children were small enough to actually use it. So when you say that it opens earlier, what's the kind of time differential between that opening versus the pools?
Depending on weather. So it can open as early as mid-April. Once the weather breaks, that you have those days that are warmer, sunny days, they start activating that park and get it going. So I think it will be something very well received by the people that use that on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Coriano, go ahead.
Thank you. Hey, George. Quick question, and if it was discussed and I missed it, I apologize. The Board of Finance removed the $75,000 for Great Oaks Park for Phase 2.
Yes. It's.
I know we've been waiting for a while for this. And
We had extensive conversation regarding Great Oaks Park. And the challenge with Great Oaks Park is that was a town-built pathway.
Right.
So that was built with town personnel and resources initially. Today, that will require extensive DEP permitting that will take years. The estimated cost that we have received for the replacement of the bridges that are there, because they can't be renovated, they're at life
Right,
end,
they need to be-
they have to be replaced, exceed $1.5 million. So the discussion that we had was that's a park that really is more of a pocket park. It's a neighborhood park amenity. If we're cutting and we trimmed so much out of this, we have so many critical needs that it was just prioritizing the resources that we have.
Okay. All right, I know a lot of people in that area are concerned about that park, and so figuring out how we can communicate with them the conundrum there
Yes. And
would be really
even removal of what's there is going to require permitting. So it's not like we can even just send in the Parks Department.
to
and
pull the old.
it's wetlands, so the minute you go into wetlands and what's there today, you would never be able to build what's there today. It wouldn't even be allowed.
Yeah, well, that's the comment that we get all the time on Facebook, that the scout troop can go build the bridge in Great Oak Park, and so obviously there's a bigger answer there.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Those are the things those scouts used to do. They used to have the board in there with all the wildlife pictures and description. It was 33 years ago I found that. Yeah, I wondered about that too, but $1.5 million. A lot on the plate. Any other discussions, any motions? Nothing? Ms. Lenzen?
Yes. I would like to make a motion that we remove the $500,000 for the sprinkler park replacement at Indian Ledge, given that we do have 2 other sprinkler parks in town, both which have recently been rehabbed.
Is there a second? Second. Ann, okay. Discussion on it? I guess you explained it. Ms. Malazzi, go ahead.
I would just ask that we not do that. I think that another important thing to think about with Indian Ledge is that it isn't attached to a pool. So if there are families that don't want to go through all the rigmarole of packing everybody up to go to an actual pool, they can use it. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that the town camps used to, at least, or still do use it on water days for the junior and the elementary level camps. It's a fantastic opportunity for more programming. So I vehemently disagree with that motion.
Ms. Isaac, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And George, I believe at the Board of Finance, you said that the at Tashua, it really is more of still a kiddie splash area. So it's more for that younger group that would have been in the kiddie pool, which wasn't safe and it's really gross. So Indian Ledge and Beaches are still 2 distinct sprinkler parks that are for different age groups.
Yes. This one really tends to support younger children. I think it's what you're saying. They rather avoid going to the pool that becomes more complicated.
Thank you.
George, before the first selectman speaks, the dollar figure you have for that, is that some quoted bid or something?
That is based on the sprinkler parks that we have done in the last 2 years. Tashua, most recently, that's underway. So that's on a unit cost based on what we've experienced with the last 2 renovations.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Vic.
Thank you. I don't have a crystal ball, but I will take a wild guess that come the springtime and we open up that sprinkler park again, that we're going to be asking for a supplemental to do the repairs, because that's what's happened over the winter, because the sprinkler park, as Mr. Estrada said, is failing. And so we'll probably have to come back and ask for a supplemental. So just, maybe we will, maybe we won't, but I would think we probably will have to. Thanks.
I know there's different ways to pay for this. I mean, bonding is the most expensive because we have to pay for it over time. We're bonding an awful lot tonight. I know one of the other, I think it was the Beaches one, we used ARPA money in the first allocation, if I remember.
Yes.
And then we had lengthy discussion with Dimitri on all the repairs and the huge cost up at Tashua.
Yes.
I think part of the thinking here is that, maybe $500,000 worth of bonding can be saved for the time being.
And the Tashua had arrived at full failure also, so that's an amenity that now will be renovated there.
Yeah, that will be full bore. Jason?
Yes, that just begs the question, if we forego the bonding, what is the likely cost to bring this back into service come springtime?
It's going to be significant just because I'm not certain that there are parts to maintain some of the technology that's there. So we're going to have to do some significant renovation just to open it and have it operational.
With that being a recurring cost the next season?
Yeah. Yes, it'll be ongoing. The park has reached end of life.
Mr. Cinto?
George, can you explain to me $500,000? You could build a house for that. I just don't understand. You got to explain to me 500 grand?
It seems
It's
amazing.
it's insane.
It unfortunately, as we've seen, costs for everything escalate. This
What
just
do we?
fell in line.
What are the parts that you need to do this?
Well,
I need to know.
You're first going to remove everything that's there. All the plumbing has to be replaced, which is all subsurface. All of the pumps and everything that supports it, the infrastructure that supports that to actually operate, will be all replaced, because that's what is really at the end of life. And then you're pouring concrete and really creating an entire area. If you go to beaches, it's pretty incredible what's there. It's dry, obviously. We haven't turned the water on because we went into cold season. And you look, and it was a similar conversation when we were discussing that, and it was ARPA funding. But you go there and you see the significance of what is constructed when you actually walk it and look at it. It's incredible. There's a lot of work, and it took months to construct.
I didn't see your hand up. Oh, I was gonna say, I didn't look it up, and I meant to, but I know it was reported by Noreen at one of the Parks and Rec meetings, the number of people that attended the beaches and Indian Ledge, and they had taken tallies, and it was pretty significant. So, I mean, it definitely is something that's utilized. You've changed the parking up at Indian Ledge. We moved there 28 years ago, and it was just being built at that point, I believe. And it's fabulous up there. I think it's a wonderful thing, but the usage was pretty shocking.
Since I arrived, that's been one of the parks that we've really concentrated on, and it's since 2020. And with your support, if you really drive it or walk that park, it's just beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Twin Brooks is the other one that is just an absolute showpiece.
Mr. Buswell?
Carl, I know it's getting late, but could I call for a quick 5-minute recess, if possible?
Okay, 4 minutes.
Done.
Can I time you?
All right, we're back. It's still 2025. Mr. Cinto, go ahead.
Hey, George, in the last 3 years, we've probably spent $10 million on football fields, baseball fields, splash pads, and pools. Right? Is that a good amount?
Significant investment.
A significant investment. We got buildings falling apart. We got schools falling apart. And we spent $10 million on baseball fields, football fields, splash pads, and pools. I just want to make sure I got that right. Just to say, that's all I want to know.
I would say to you, your parks, I think, had arrived at collapse. So the renovation of the parks is pretty much this year, as we've discussed, is being completed. If the bonding that is being requested tonight is supported, Indian Ledge and Unity will be complete. So the major park renovations for the town of Trumbull will then pretty much be taken care of. You have some pocket park renovations and that sort of thing along the way that still you'll look at, but they're not going to be significant, massive investments. So what I would say to you is I think that the investment that you have supported puts Trumbull in a light that very few other communities can boast.
Well, that's all well said and done, but I still think it'd be probably spending money on schools fixing and fields would have probably been better than what we did it. But it's done now. But it's just when the numbers start adding up after a while, it's a lot.
Yep.
And we're trying to build a new school, and we're piling on all this other stuff. That's all. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Ms. Lanson, and then Mr. Lemoyne.
What do you, and I know we don't have crystal balls, so please never think that that's what I'm expecting, but what would you estimate the cost to be to do the repairs as opposed to the replacement in the spring?
My anticipation would be somewhere in the 60, 70, 80,000. We don't know until we open up and turn things on for the season,
Okay.
what's actually going to work and what's not.
Okay.
Because it was pretty difficult keeping it going last year.
Got it. Thank you.
Before we vote on, I'm sorry, Mr. Lemoyne, go ahead.
George, can you tell us how long we would get the $500,000, how long the splash pad would last?
The park, that splash pad, I asked Dimitri a while back, and I believe he said that was over 20 years. I think that was like 23 years or something like that. So the splash pads they're pretty durable. They last a long time, so they definitely qualify for capital support.
And if I could just follow up. So you would anticipate we'd probably have to spend $60,000 to $80,000 a year in constant repairs if we don't replace this?
I don't think that would be every year that level, but for this year to just get it going again, but definitely an elevated maintenance expense because just it's so old, it's not like replacement parts are readily available anymore. And some of the issues that we have there are the subsurface, which are going to require concrete to be removed and new plumbing patched, replaced. So it's peeling the onion. Once you begin, you just don't know what you're going to find. It's like an old house.
I was studying, sorry. Ms. Lanson, go ahead.
That's okay. So just to confirm, there is a belief that this splash pad, the replaced splash pad, would outlive the life of the bonding, essentially.
Yes, that's the anticipation for sure.
Okay, so with all due respect to all of the members of the town council, I would like to remove or withdraw my motion to remove the $500,000. So does that have to be a motion to withdraw a motion? Do I need a second?
Second, Joy
Who
Cologne.
did the second? You're withdrawing the second. Okay, we're all withdrawn. We're back to the motion.
We are so withdrawn.
All right, we're
Thank
back.
you very much.
Thank you for your
We're back to the resolution, and just with like the last bonding one, I do need to point out it's a little bit smaller than the resolution that was originally requested. There was something in Fleet, I think, that was reduced by the Board of Finance. So I'm just pointing that out. Council does have the authority on a 2/3 vote to restore that. Exactly what it was, I don't recall.
Some fleet vehicles.
Some vehicles.
The park, Great Oaks Park, and there was.
Oh, yeah, 75,000 for Great Oaks Park, and then there was another 110 or so.
I think there was one other thing I don't
Yeah.
remember off the top of my head right
Okay. Would require a 2/3 vote. Is there any interest in any of that being restored? All right, then we have the resolution, as has been moved to the floor and discussed. Is there anything else to be said? All right, then I will call for a vote. All in favor of Resolution TC 30-118, please raise your hands. Anybody opposed? No abstentions. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll go to the top of the batting order. Number 1, Resolution TC 30-108. Mr. Pifko, would you move this to the floor, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Resolution TC 30-108, to consider and act upon a resolution that would appoint Alyssa Hall as a
Is it possible, if there's no objection to any of these, that the council waive the reading, number 1, and number 2, to vote en masse on all of these resolutions, these appointments?
If you say I could do it.
I'm saying you can do it.
I'll second that.
All right. Then,
I'll make a motion that we waive the reading of all R&R committee meeting minutes
no,
and
the resolutions.
resolution.
You have to recite
Sorry.
them. Just
Okay.
recite the resolutions 1 through 8. The numbers, just say the
Oh.
numbers.
I'd like to waive the reading of resolution numbers 1 through 8. Make a motion.
30-108 through 1.
Okay.
15.
TC 30-108 through TC 30-115. The reading of those resolutions be waived.
Second, Joy Collin.
What she said.
All in favor? All right. So then we need to have a... Yes, we need a motion to approve said motions.
Second.
All right, there'll be no discussion. I'll call for a vote. All in favor of approving these 6, 7, 8 resolutions? Raise your hands. Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Any more questions for Maria before she walks out? I think that concludes our agenda. I want to thank everybody. This was a bountiful effort tonight. I
Make a
appreciate
motion,
it.
we adjourn.
Thank you.
Oh, wait for one.
We're adjourned.
10, 9. What? I was 11:04.